Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much and welcome to day 4 of our 5-day seminar conference brought to you by Discovery Mentorship with Purpose. My name is Rosh Mamabodo. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an academic, I'm an accountant, but I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship and youth development. So today's session is one of those sessions that I'm very, very passionate about. I'll be hosting today's session, and later on, Timothy will be joining us to do the second and third sessions of today. The title for today's session is called Harnessing Human Potential. And the first session is youth unemployment to address, youth entrepreneurship to address unemployment, which I'll be joined by 2 quite amazing panelists. I'll introduce them in a minute. So we'll have an hour of discussion on basically youth entrepreneurship and how we can actually use entrepreneurship as a catalyst to reduce unemployment in the country. So that's our first session that I'll be taking you through. And thereafter, Timothy Maurice Webster will have a masterclass with Nichole on the power of volunteerism. That is at 11 o'clock to 12, 10 minutes after 11. And the last session for today is the human touch in a technology-filled world. That will also be facilitated by Timothy, and he'll be hosting Riaan van Reenen. So I'm looking forward to today's sessions. As per the usual, feel free to throw in your questions, your comments using the question chat session, and just just fire away your questions, and we will read or pose those questions to our panelists. There won't be a poll for now, but just be ready at the end of the sessions today. You will be asked a couple of questions on how you felt about the session that you just watched, and feel free to also share your comments on that as well. So let's get into today's session, harnessing human potential, looking at youth entrepreneurship as a catalyst for dealing with unemployment in South Africa. I'm joined by 2 esteemed panelists. The first being Shaun Matisonn. I'll just quickly go through his bio. Shaun is the head of international markets for Vitality Group, a division of Discovery. And he also serves on the executive committee of Discovery Limited and has been with the company since 1994. Previously, Mr. Matisonn served as the CEO of Pru Protection, where he created and grew the Pru Health and Pru Protection businesses. He has established papers on healthcare reform and the use of medical savings account in various healthcare systems. Mr. Matisonn has also participated in consumer-driven healthcare projects for the Harvard Business School. Shaun holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mathematical Statistics and Actuarial Science from the University of Witwatersrand, South Africa. He is a fellow of the Faculty of Actuaries in the UK, a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa, an associate of the Society of Actuaries in the US, and a member of the American Academy of Actuaries. Mr. Matisonn enjoys triathlons, cycling, marathon running, and reading. Good morning, Shaun, and welcome. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts today.
Morning, Raj. Thank you very much. That was a very, I appreciate the introduction. And this is a topic that I really think is so important and something that is inspiring. And it's a real honor to be here and looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you so much. And our next panelist is Dr. Dulcy Rakumakoe. She holds a MBBCH degree, basically a medical degree from Wits University, a diploma in occupational health, a diploma in HIV management, travel medicine diploma, Masters of Science in sports medicine, and a Masters in Business Administration degree from Oregon Institute of Business Science. Dr. Dulcy is a social entrepreneur with a passion for providing healthcare and wellness solutions for low and middle income communities in South Africa. In 2016, she was awarded he was awarded Social Entrepreneur Regional Business Achiever, and she's also, Santam Women of the Future 2020 winner and 2020 Role Model of the Year Feather Awards winner as well. So she's highly accomplished. She founded UK Medical Center in 2013 after already being a general practitioner in Vryburg, then Carltonville for 11 years. And her vision is to provide world-class health services at affordable costs in communities. In 2019, Dr. Dulcy founded Queer Well, which is an NPO that provides access to mental health care for the LGBTIQ+ community. And this was formally launched in March 2020 and has quickly grown and has so far provided mental health care support and education to more than 1,000 queer people across Africa. Dr. Dulcy is a board chairperson of Forum for the Empowerment of Women, a board member of South African HIV Clinicians Society, member of Professional Association for Transgender Health, and a board member of ORAMQ Populations Advisory Board. Sure, and she's a regular guest on LXFM, Juice FM, Metro FM, Kai FM, and contributes weekly to the Citizen newspaper and Bona magazine, talking all things health. Dr. Dulcy, good morning and welcome.
Tate Mamabolo, thank you so much for having me. I'm also very excited about being in this space and just hearing all the ideas and thoughts that are gonna be coming through, because we're dealing with a serious topic. There is very high youth unemployment, but very low youth entrepreneurship, so I'm happy to be part of this conversation where we hopefully come up with some solutions and just a way forward, for the country. So thank you so much.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. I was actually reading this. I don't know if you know this book. I was reading this book and I stumbled across UK Medical Center. I'm like, oh, wow, I know this person.
Yes.
So you're also featured in the book. Well done.
Yes. Thank you. Thank
Great
you so
stuff.
much.
Before we dive into the discussion, do you mind sharing your experience with mentorship? I mean, being on the receiving end, what has mentorship done for you in your career? What are the highlights that you can look back at? You would say, I achieved this because of the people around me who were mentoring me, who were guiding me. Shaun, maybe let's start with you. What's your experience being on the on the receiving side of mentorship?
The receiving side, yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, look, I consider myself extremely privileged to be at Discovery since 1994. So I've had the privilege of kind of working, living, and to a certain extent growing up with two of South Africa's greatest entrepreneurs, I would argue, in terms of Adrian Gore and Barry Swartzberg. And so I think what I've learned is a few things. There really is something special about being in the presence of great people. And, you know, I think a lesson for all of us is to kind of surround ourselves with really good people, people that are successful, people that we aspire to be, people who really set the example, and almost kind of drinking from what they do, how they think, how they learn, how they solve problems. And you know, I think that's like one of a great gift that I've been privileged to have in my life. So I think finding great people, and my experience is also that those people that are really good and meaningful, if you reach out to them, they'll be there to help you. Very few people will say no if you just ask them, actually. More often than not, you know, something about mentoring people. I can talk a little bit about my experience on the other side later on in the conversation, but being a recipient, it's incredibly powerful and an immense privilege, but most people want to do it. So you just have to ask them. And then I think it's really thinking about learning and absorbing, and just, you know, what I've learned both from Adrian and Barry and from my Discovery experience is really the power of vision, the power of setting goals, and the power of taking calculated risks can really make a difference, and the power of purpose. And so learning from them, asking, thinking, and often just observing has been very powerful for me. So something I'm incredibly grateful for.
Great. Thank you so much, Shaun. I mean, we'll come back to this topic as we go along. Thanks for that. Dr. Dulcy, your thoughts, experiences being on the receiving side of mentorship?
Yeah, like I think like Mr. Matisonn was saying, you know, like I think for me, I was lucky enough to discover my vision quite early on, you know, in my life. So for some reason, I have been able to attract, you know, people who just want to take me, you know, to the next level. And they came in different forms, you know, most of them mentors, you know, because like I was 6 years old when my grandmother said to me, I must grow up and become a doctor so she doesn't stand for a long time in a queue, you know. But I think that was the original, like, you know, mentor for me, like someone who just believed, looked at a child at 6 years old and say, this child has the potential, you know. And, you know, then having your teachers, you know, throughout high school around me, just everyone knowing this one is going to be a doctor, and everyone kind of just guiding me, you know, in the right direction in terms of subjects that I choose and basically the path that I choose. And when I started working, you know, and realizing that I actually want to be in private practice, you know, the whole time. From my internship and community service, I jumped straight into private practice, you know. So there were not many mentors around me at that time that were in the medical field. So my mentorship were coming from people in different fields, you know, people who were in marketing, people who were in finance, you know, guiding me until like, you know, I actually took it upon myself to study like business. You know, I went to institutions like Race Corp and finally also at Gibbs, and like, you know, got to be mentored there, but not just around like business systems, but just also around personal mastery and like the importance of that, you know, when it comes to fulfilling what your purpose and vision is, you know, in life. And now at the stage that I'm in, the mentors that I have are mentors around leadership, you know, because as you grow your business, you become a leader, you know, and a leader of people and a leader of other leaders, you know, because you start, you know, bringing in like really strong people in actuarial science, in finance, in HR and marketing into your business. And it takes special skills to be able to lead people who are leaders, you know, in themselves. So the mentors have kind of been tailored, you know, around what the different stages of my growth have been.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, it's quite interesting that I mean, Shaun is mentioning that he was mentored by the founders of Discovery. I had a conversation with Barry yesterday, and he was also mentored by Laurie Dipenar. So it's quite interesting that for every successful person, there's always been a mentor or mentors behind. So we also throughout this conference, each and every speaker that comes through, they talk about the fact that they have had mentors along their journey. So we can't underplay the importance of mentorship at all. So let's get into today's topic. We have an hour or so. We should finish it at the top of the hour. But before we get that, if as part of the audience, if you have a question as we are having this type of discussion, please feel free to throw in your questions, and I will pose those questions to our panelists. Just give me your opening remarks on this topic, because this is, and to both your acknowledgement, this is a very, very important topic. More so now with the situation that we find ourselves with lockdowns, lots and lots and lots of people's livelihood vanishing in front of their eyes, and the numbers just scary, staggering, unemployment numbers going up the roof. And some can argue that in South Africa, we have one of the highest unemployment rates globally. What are your thoughts, on this topic? And, just to experience your observations. Can we start with you, Dr. Dulcy, and then Shaun, you can come through?
Okay. The topic today is around entrepreneurship and cultivating entrepreneurship and even thinking, entrepreneurship. And for me, my personal experience, especially having grown up in the township, and realizing that is really not what is talked about. People are talking about go to school, get your qualifications so you can get employment. And now we're sitting with the problem of unemployed, graduates. So I think it really starts there. It starts with the conversations that we need to be having with our children at home and in school. We need to be thinking of our education system and starting to look at what are we producing? Are we producing people who are going to be coming out and sitting and waiting, for someone to give them a job, so that they can provide, for their families. And when it comes to providing for families, again, like you say, with the pandemic and everyone is like, every family is kind of looking for some form of a breadwinner, and again, when you look at the township experience, not many people or not many families have seen people go into entrepreneurship and succeed, so we don't encourage it. With Black people, generally, we do not encourage people to go into entrepreneurship because it is risky. There is not a lot of money that is going around. What happens if you fail? We are all counting on you to take care of us. So if you fail at this, you would have failed all of us. So many of the people are scared to go into entrepreneurship based on all those reasons. And also if you think of the environment that entrepreneurship can flourish in, you need a government that is also thinking around how do we support young business people, or young people with ideas of going into business. How do we as government play a role in making sure that the environment, the business environment, the political environment, the legal environment, everything, allows people to come into the entrepreneurship space and actually support them and make sure that they succeed, so that they contribute to the growth of the economy, they contribute to providing employment. And sometimes when I speak to unemployed graduates, especially in the townships, I talk around how they have learned skills that they can be using in the small businesses that are existing around them. But the thinking of young graduates is about working in a big corporate, is about, wearing a nice shirt and a tie and going into town, to work somewhere. They never think, how can I contribute the marketing that I've learned, for instance, to Mom Sonto's tuck shop next door? How can I help her grow her business? And in that way, I could get a stake in that business and I could build it to a certain level and then start attracting other unemployed graduates who have studied accounting, IT, you know, and just bringing them into these existing small businesses in the townships and helping formalize them and taking them to the next level.
Great, awesome stuff. You have raised some pertinent issues. We'll touch on them as we go along, but thanks for that, Dr. Dulcy. Shaun, entrepreneurship, you know, as a catalyst.
So on the one hand, I think, you know, entrepreneurship is an exceptionally powerful catalyst. But on the other hand, I think, you know, we shouldn't underestimate the power of education, because I think, you know, I mean, you can see, you know, if you look at some of the very disturbing kind of youth unemployment stats in our country, well, of course, there are unemployed graduates. I still don't believe there are enough graduates, but maybe in the right field. So I'm still a firm believer of the power of education and the power of that as a backbone. And if I think of many of the successful entrepreneurs that I've either worked with or got to know in my time, they all are, you know, I don't unfortunately live in Silicon Valley where I've got, you know, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg's dropouts who've been successful. The entrepreneurs that I actually all had a very good education, you know, so they had a very good education. But I think, and maybe to Dr. Dulcy's point, they used that education as a catalyst for doing something profound. And they used the power of that to think about how they can make something and make a difference in the world. And they were prepared to take calculated risks. You know, you talk about Barry and Laurie Dippenaar. Laurie once said to us, it's a very powerful quote, you know, good decisions come from experience, but experience comes from bad decisions. And, you know, we've got to learn, we've got to create a much bigger culture that it's okay to make bad decisions and it's okay to fail. I think, you know, people, to be an entrepreneur, you've got to try things and it's not always going to work. You know, just to digress a little bit, you know, over the years, I've read many business books, and the one that has had the most resonance with me is a book called The Halo Effect. And what's very interesting about the halo effect, that's an experiment that was done in the 60s, I think, and basically showed that tall, good-looking males tend to be paid more and people perceive them to be more successful. And that's really the halo effect, that they saw what people looked. So sometimes having that suit and tie may not be such a bad thing, but you know, they sort of judged people from how they looked and then created that halo effect. And then what happens is that's what happens to successful companies. So successful companies, you get all these business books, but they're written generally after the fact. So they look after the fact and they create a narrative post-fact about what made these people successful. And it turns out, both in my experience and what I've learned, is business isn't paint by numbers. It's actually about a series of making more good decisions than bad decisions, and understanding and managing your risk. And I think that's like the core of entrepreneurship, is to be prepared to fail, but do it in a way that you can manage the risk appropriately, you know? And of course, if you've got a good education, your risk is much lower, because if it doesn't work out, you know, there are lots of places to go and actually work, and you can use those experiences to really transform yourself. But I do think, you know, if you look at where jobs are created and the opportunities for young people, they're coming from new businesses. They're coming from businesses we don't know today. They're not coming from corporate South Africa. You know, we're trying to create a fantastic global business in South Africa. We want to be proudly South African. We'd love to employ more and more South Africans. And it's those people that are thinking like that that are going to create jobs. And so on the one hand, maybe, and maybe another point to make, sorry, I'm hogging the floor a little bit, is we can't all be entrepreneurs, but we can associate ourselves with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's very important. We can be partners with the right people. Yeah. And I think that can create also the catalyst for success.
Thank you so much. You know, I mean, a couple of years ago, maybe not a couple, about 10 years ago, you know, there was this document called the National Development Plan in South Africa, which, when you look at the preamble of that document, it paints a very bleak picture. And this was 10 years ago. It paints a very bleak picture. And in that picture, it says something that for me sort of was quite, hair-raising. And it says, in South Africa, young people face the prospect of not living be above the poverty breadline. In other words, living above $2 a day. And the only time that they can start living above the poverty line is when they go to pension and they start getting social grant. Then through that, they are able to live above the poverty line. But besides that, they are facing the prospect of living almost their entire life without getting a job in this country. And this has been going on for quite a while in South Africa. Why is it that this is not a pandemic in South Africa? Why is it that it sounds like it's a normal thing, unemployment, every quarter we get shock treatment from statistics SA showing us these numbers, and we all get shocked for a week, and then after we go back to our normal life. Has this become our normal, the situation, youth unemployment, or unemployment generally in the country? Is it something that we have normalized as society? Shaun, your thoughts?
Well, I hope we haven't. I hope we shouldn't, right? We should be outraged. It's hard to, it is a form of pandemic. I do agree with you. So we should never be accepting of it. So that would be the point one. But I think maybe we are, but maybe as you were talking, what is the counter to it? And I think maybe what we're not doing enough of in the context of this discussion is really celebrating entrepreneurs to a point you made earlier, making it much easier, much easier to set up businesses, to make capital available. I mean, we had some fantastic initiatives in terms of small business funds, and those still exist. And actually, there's lots of private capital available to help people start businesses. But, I don't think we've celebrated enough. I don't think we've made it easily accessible. I don't think we've joined the dots. I mean, there are amazing initiatives of people encouraging startups, and there are amazing things, but there's not enough of. I mean, it's like, this is not the purpose of this, but there's this. Yesterday, they sunsetted the Section 12J initiatives, which was on the cover of this morning's Financial Mail, which was a fund set up where you could create tax deduction to create entrepreneurs. And I actually haven't read the piece. I just saw the front page, which said, was this a mistake? And I think it was. And I think we're not giving enough credence to the power of education and the power of entrepreneurship, and almost doing everything we possibly can to enable people to create businesses. Because if people create businesses, and then just to emphasize the earlier point, they can try and it's okay to fail and you'll try again. If we can enable that, just given the kind of the power of us as South Africans, I think we can do enormous things.
Yeah. Thanks. Dr. Dulcy?
Yeah.
I mean, is this supposed to be a pandemic? Are we not treating it as such?
I think, there is general complacency, like when it comes to issues that I really feel should be enraging, South Africans at the moment. Number one being the youth unemployment, number two being the COVID vaccine rollout, for instance, like people should be really angry that up to so far only less than 5% of the population is vaccinated. Like the 70+% of youth unemployment is really something that should be making us, as a country, like really angry and saying to the government, you need to be doing something, like Shaun is saying, around creating that environment and funding and just general support. And on the issue of failures, we need to be celebrating the people who have tried and not succeeded, and looking at and helping them look at what had gone wrong, because it's only when you fail that you can look at what you've attempted and say, this and this has not worked. Maybe I should be doing this differently this time, and then you do it again. That's how you eventually succeed. All the successful entrepreneurs that I know have failed at 10 other things, before finding the one thing, that works. They are really good, nice businesses that are coming out of the country recently, you know, like in the shoe business, you have like brands like your Batu and Drip that are coming out. These were started from the boots of cars in the townships, and they have grown to be like big businesses with 3, 4, up to 10 branches, you know, some of them. Well, personally, when I started, I was a single person GP practice. Now we have 10 branches, you know, across Gauteng. But there are many mistakes that have been made along the way. But it's only when you do these mistakes that you learn and you are able to grow your business from there. And that's what we should be teaching kids in school, that what ideas do you have, come, start on them. Okay, fail, what has failed? And then we take it to the next step. We need to just be teaching differently.
Yeah. But let's stick on that, Dr. Dulcy, on you being an entrepreneur. I mean, entrepreneurship is hard. It's very hard. You know, and you emphasize poor communities, townships, where you still have this, you know, you are the first graduate at home, you have siblings that you need to look after, you know, I don't like using this terminology of black tax, so to speak, but you have this, you know, responsibilities back at home, and being an entrepreneur, it's just not in the books until maybe later on. I mean, share with us, I mean, you know, make this personal for us to get it. What has been your experience being an entrepreneur? How bad has it gone? It's easy for us to talk about the, you know, so then I built 10 branches in Gauteng, but we know it's not a straight line, right?
Yes.
How worse has it gotten?
Okay, so I think it goes down to, it goes back actually to that vision and purpose, right? So when like the first conversation happened with my grandmother when I was 6, and then I graduated, did my internship. When I did my community service, I did it in a village called, like in Vryburg, in a village called Ganyesa. So Ganyesa was a 60-bed hospital with around 20 villages surrounding. All those 20 villages relied on this one hospital, you know. So you start seeing that story of my grandmother. They're waiting in the queues for a long time. Some people losing their lives when they should not be. When there's serious cases, they need to be transported about 400-500 kilometers away, you know, to get the assistance. So I was reminded of why I went into medicine in the first place. So I thought, for next year, I'm just going to open a medical practice. I don't know the first thing about business, but I'll just open, I'll figure it along the way, I'll figure it out along the way as I start. I just want to serve people. So even the mathematics, the calculations of what it's gonna take was based on what I was earning at the hospital at that time, thinking, oh, I'll probably need to see this number of people a day, just, you know, for the business to take off and be able to sustain me. I didn't realize that in a business, there's finance, there's HR, there's operations, marketing, you know, all those things. Yes, marketing, all those things you learn while you're inside and realizing that, oh my God, I've just lost money here. I did not know how I lost this money, you know, and you start making those mistakes until like the lowest point for me was when I realized that I had I thought I was paying SARS for like the last 3 years, and I was defrauded by an accountant who was much cleverer than me. So instead of paying SARS, I was paying directly to him, and realized that for the 3 years I was not paying SARS, and they were threatening to close me down. And I just thought, okay, I'm leaving this entrepreneurship thing. I'm going back to the hospital. People who know how to do this will do this. This is not for me, you know. But you get angels that come through and say, hey, we had you in this type of trouble. How do we support you? And how do we so I had friends who were like chartered accountants, and who just said, we will come together and see how we can help you sort this mess out, you know. And in 6 months, I managed to sort out the problem that I had, you know. But it was a big learning for me that finance is the biggest part of the business. I need to stay on top of my financials. I need to understand my income statement, my cash flow. I need to understand my balance sheet, you know. But those were some of the hard lessons, you know, even lessons around just marketing. When you open a new practice and you just sit there and wait for people to come, You know, you learn when it's like 2 months later and you don't have patience and you have stuff to pay, that you need to be investing in marketing and all. You know, so all those like, you know, business will teach you all those things, you know, but you don't need to get all the hard lessons yourself. There's people around you who can help you and support you. Business is also around, you learn that business is about building relationships, you know, and being and having integrity, because people will not be attracted to working with you if you don't have integrity, if you are not a nice person, if you're not a good, you need to just, like, the best way to run business is to be a good person, you know. And good person means, you know, honoring your debts, honoring the people that work for you, and making sure that you are leading them properly, you know, making sure that all the different parts of the business are taken care of, you know, with integrity. That is how you like, you know, you grow your business.
Awesome. So they say being an entrepreneur is like taking off an airplane and assembling a parachute midair. So what has been the role that Discovery, you know, the enterprise development played in your business? I understand that you were part of the Discovery ESD program. How has it assisted you?
All right. Firstly, before that program, Discovery also supported me at Race Corp. You know, so I've been taken care of by Discovery, you know, like for quite. And I think it again, that purpose and vision. And I think at some point we need to talk about it today, because when your vision is about making a real difference, you know, in people's life, my vision and purpose has always been about providing access to quality healthcare, you know, to the low and middle income communities. And in a country with more than 85% of people not being on medical aid, that's a big, you know, market that one needs to be thinking about. How do we make sure that access is improved for these people? So as you present this vision, you know, like, you get big business like your Discovery to be like, to believe in what you're trying to do and seeing how they can best support you, you know, to help you go to the next level. So with Race Corp, I was supported by Discovery and learned a lot of the things, you know, around business. And with the enterprise development, it was like the funding when we opened like the Park Station practice, which was our biggest practice, you know, at the time, 1,000 square meters. And we were trying to just be a one-stop shop of healthcare, you know, for the community. So there was mentorship that came with that. There was marketing support, you know, as well, just market research and understanding the community that we're going to be working in, just general business system support and mentorship. That's like, you know, like one of the things that like that I got from the enterprise development part. And recently I also with Discovery did like the Henley Business School, future proofing your practice course with Henley, with the support of Discovery again. So I think those are like the good relationship that I've managed to build with Discovery over the years.
Awesome. Shaun, so we talk entrepreneurship, and there's different types of entrepreneurship. One of them, and I think Barry mentioned it also, is corporate entrepreneurship, right? How do we get entrepreneurship thriving in corporates? You know, is it something that is alive and well and kicking within Discovery? Do you encourage your team to be entrepreneurs within? Or is it just stick to our KPIs, come performance appraisal, we fight for a 3 or a 4? Or do you encourage your team to bring ideas to enterprise within the environment?
So I think the simple answer is yes. So we call it intrapreneurship. And I actually think there's not enough of that done, because it's a very powerful way, because obviously risk is mitigated. And I think on the one hand, we certainly encourage it as much as possible in Discovery, and over the kind of 27, 28 years that we've been around, you know, we've started a number of businesses, and they've come from ideas from people within the business, you know, and and we've also recognized that we can celebrate that sort of success. So we need to have a model that both recognizes, yes, it's a big corporation and there's lots of corporate responsibility and people must deliver and we need to monitor them carefully. But ultimately, you know, I mean, it goes back to a point Dr. Dulcy made. It's like values are so important. One of the lessons I've learned in my life is like the importance of values. So like the power of, you know, and what really is the definition of values? It's not something that you just put on a wall. It's something that when the going gets tough, you're not going to give up. You know, it's only a value if you really, you'll live it. And, you know, integrity, you know, and honesty, it's easy to talk about, but you've really got to live it. And we talk about this liberating the best in our people. And I think to liberate the best, you've got to give them those opportunities and you've got to encourage them and nurture them and give them those opportunities. But for some people, they'll be liberated through KPIs and good delivery. I mean, I think we're not all entrepreneurs, I think, but if those that are encouraged and those that aren't are encouraged to associate themselves with entrepreneurs, will be tremendously successful. And then just to go back to this point about the power of purpose, and at the end of the day, while in my experience, we've built lots of businesses. Businesses are hard and you have ups and downs. But if you're clear on your purpose and you're clear on value to the customer, what you're really doing, and you've got the right people around you, you'll navigate, you know, those stormy waters. You know, and so that's, but I think that's our role as Discovery, is to encourage entrepreneurship within the business and then to support as many businesses as we can. And for us as individuals to give up our time to help as much as possible.
Thank you. I mean, you raise quite an interesting and I think important, you know, statement by saying earlier on, you mentioned that we're not celebrating entrepreneurs enough. And I mean, if you look at in South Africa, but I think generally speaking, globally, you have situation where in South Africa, what you're likely to see on the front page is you know, political news. So politicians are far more popular in this country. Sports people, actors, you know, they're the most celebrated people in the country. And if you are lucky enough, an entrepreneur somewhere along the list, but at the bottom. How do we change that? Because when young people see what we celebrate the most, and according in their minds, that's something to aspire to. How do we change that? How do we start? What is it that we need to do to celebrate entrepreneurs far more? In the same vein, we celebrate politicians, actors, sports people. How do we elevate entrepreneurship to the same status?
Sure, that's a difficult one, you know, because I see the role that social media is currently playing, you know, and I think that this is the one space that I have seen really celebrating and showcasing, you know, entrepreneurs. And, you know, because especially like on the marketing side, it has allowed a lot of like small businesses that don't have like, you know, deep pockets to speak about their services and advertise their services and all that. This is also the space where we see a lot of businesses that are doing well, you know, like, you know, saying, hey, we are opening this here, we are opening this there, this is what I've learned, and people sharing their personal stories. So I think to get us to that level, more and more people need to share their stories of success and even stories of failure, you know, but we need to share these stories as much as we can in our little communities, on social media, in platforms like this. You know, when we invited to speak, we need to be honest about what entrepreneurship is and the difference, you know, that it does, and encourage more and more people to go into entrepreneurship. But I love what Shaun was saying, that not everyone is designed, you know, to be an entrepreneur, but every entrepreneur needs intrapreneurs around them. You know, if that makes sense. Like I'll tell you, in my personal business, I usually say to the team, I'm the vision, you know, and you guys are the execution. You know, because with my COO and CFO, I will come and say, I want 5 more branches this year or something like that, you know, and like these are the guys who will sit down and do the calculations. This is what it's going to this is what's going to be required. This is how much we need to put into marketing. This is how we go into this community. Someone who's in real estate will look at the spatial requirement, like all those things, but you need people around you to bring the vision to light. They usually say, like, a good business passes the story test and the maths test. So like, as a visionary, as an entrepreneur, I'm just the story, you know, but like the team that is around me will be the team that will make sure that this story comes alive. This story is properly implemented on. Someone is looking at what the risks are and how to mitigate them and all those things. That's how you take your business to the next level.
Awesome. So I like that. It passes the story test and the maths test. Thanks for that. Shaun, when Mark Zuckerberg and Obama met for the first time, the headline was Obama meets Zuckerberg. In other words, here is the politician meeting this important big entrepreneur. How do we get to that level where our entrepreneurs are seen as, you know, more important, or if not on the same level as everyone else that we celebrate?
So it is a tough question, and I was thinking of an interesting kind of analogy. You know, I read a book by Richard Moore looking at why are Jamaican runners, and it's got nothing to do with our conversation, but I'll share this anecdote. Why are Jamaican runners so successful? And he went and he did a whole study. It was amazing to see, why is this tiny island of, a handful of people so successful in short distance sprinting? And actually, when you unpack it, there may be some genetic advantages for Jamaicans, maybe, but no one's really sure, and that may or may not be the case. But actually, when you unravel it, it's a culture that's built at schools. You know, I've just forgotten the name of it, but they have this high school running event in Jamaica that's like the Olympic Games. And then you've got Usain Bolt as a role model who lives there, who's been successful. So I think, in trying to think about your answer, we need to not, it's Dr. Dulcy's building on social media, but it's starting actually at home, at schools. You know, we should be inviting entrepreneurs to tell their stories to our kids from as small as possible. We should be in our own homes. When we see entrepreneurs, we should be inviting, okay, we can't do that with COVID, but post-COVID, we should be having gatherings of entrepreneurs, celebrating them, surrounding our children with them, making them associated. And the media should be celebrated. We have things like the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. I don't even know it exists. I know it existed 10 years ago. I haven't seen anything about it.
It still exists.
As corporate South Africa, we should be celebrating entrepreneurs, creating awards, giving them and finding those stories and telling them. And then I suppose in our own right, we should be sharing them wherever we can, in the social media framework.
Great stuff. So I'll reserve about 10 minutes for us to discuss solutions. But for now, I'm opening up the floor for questions. Please, if you're watching, you have a question or a comment, please feel free to fire away on the question section. The first question is from Anthony Joseph, and it goes: is it not the fear of the unknown when one thinks about entrepreneurship and the history that we are coming from that causes so many of us to turn the other way, in other words, to look for a job? Maybe this is something that we need to work on in our early exposure education. Fear of the unknown. And I know both of you have mentioned something about failure. Fear is, I'm afraid to fail, because if I fail, there's this connection. If I fail, I'm not going to get a job, I'm not going to eat, and I'm going to die, right? So we have this, and as a result, I don't want to go down that path. I want the path that's proven. How do you deal with fear? I mean, how do we demystify failure? Because, how do we celebrate failure?
I think firstly, like, I think I read somewhere where they said fear like stands for false evidence, like of something appearing real. Yes,
yes.
Because what I've like take it from someone who's failed many times. I didn't die, and and what happens with failure is the learnings are so great that when you do this again, you can only take it to the next level. And usually what I've learned also is, like, with failure, like when you think about it, you're thinking worst case scenario, and it never really happens like that. It, like, when I'm going to try and sell this bottle and no one buys, and I come back home with it, I can still go and sell it tomorrow. So the failure is really not as catastrophic as it is, in your head. So, but that is why you need a team around you. Like, when you plan on doing something, get people around you who you trust, who believe in who have bought into your vision, who believe in what you believe in, to say, how do we, like, what are the risks, what could go wrong, and start listing the things that could go wrong, and start in the next column list what you will do when this happens. What will you do when this happens? And then, okay, and some books talk of the minimal viable product, MVP. Go in with, like with an MVP, and then your customers will give you feedback of, we like this, we don't like this, and then you like, that's how you keep improving your product, but working with your customer to improve your product until you get to a product that they really love and support. And always when you start a business or start something, you have what are called, those initial people who will just go and come and test your product for you. You rely on those people to give you that feedback, to keep on improving, so so I really think that's really it. Just go in and do it and get the lessons. The trick is to just learn quickly. Don't be stubborn. When something shows you it doesn't work, like, stop doing it and start doing it differently.
So the sky is not going to fall because you failed, basically.
Yes.
But I also like that. I mean, there's this. It's quite touted in the US: fail fast, fail forward. So don't build a tent or a monument on your failure. Fail quickly, learn from that, and then move on. But thanks for that, Shaun.
Can I just add? Sorry to interrupt. Can I add two points to that? One. I think, going back to that education point, when we tell stories, we mustn't make them feel like this unbelievable, I started in my garage, I coded, and the next thing I was a trillionaire, like, that's not how life works, So in telling those entrepreneurial stories, we should tell about the failure and, in a way, the power of failure. And then the point I wanted to make to everyone listening, when I see and recruit talented people, and I see that they've tried something in a startup, makes me even more lustful to recruit them, because those are people that I know have an appetite for risk. And if they haven't succeeded, well, we can probe a bit more why, but we can provide them with bit more, potentially some of as a corporate, we can provide much more assets, much more tools to make them successful. So I really think we've got to tell those stories, we've got to tell success comes through failure, and that's fine. It's absolutely okay.
So I have a group of friends. We meet once a month or so, and every time we meet, we talk about what we failed at in that month. And so I know if I'm meeting them next week and I haven't failed at something, I have to go and fail quickly at something, so that I can put into the discussion, right? But I find that, we don't encourage failure. People, I'm like, if you've failed so many times, you've went bankrupt, we laugh at you. You're a laughing stock, another failure, and people, it's like you don't want to associate with you. How do we change failure from being a taboo into something that we celebrate? How do we, from primary school, how do we encourage people to fail more, than they succeed? Because we know that you only need to succeed once, but you need to fail so many times before. How do we encourage that? Failure is painful. and I'm sure you're not saying fail for the sake of failing, right? But I'm saying, failing, making new mistakes. How do we inspire people to look forward as to fail?
Sure.
Look, I think, sorry to interrupt, my answer would be, I think you've got to hear from successful people
Yes.
that they failed.
Yeah.
Because I think that's like the most important narrative, is to recognize that successful, and it's not failure for failure's sake, it's failure to learn, failure to grow, and failure to develop. And I think some of it also, a lot of this comes from the culture at home and the culture at school. And, I think all of that, from when we grow up, we've got to understand we're going to try, that's how we are as human beings. We don't learn to walk, Dr. Dulcy, know better than us, without falling over. That's the only way you can learn to walk. So why then do we think later in life the only way we can learn is by just being successful from day one? But I'm not sure the way we think about things at home, and if things go wrong, do we praise our kids? Do we debrief properly? When things go wrong at school, that's not necessarily seen as a success. Everyone's got academic excellence. I do think we've got to think about how we create ourselves as human beings to learn from that.
I guess what's important from the failure is the learning of what didn't work. So when people have failed at some, especially kids now, when your kid is doing something and they fail at it, when you sit down with them to talk about it, just ask them, what were the lessons? What have you learned, from this? How are you going to do this differently, going forward? And I think if we talk about failure as the learning of what does not work, it becomes more palatable, for people, because if you remember a report at school, you either passed or you failed. Like there's either a P or an F there, and with the F, came like beatings at home and all those things, So if we start encouraging, like Shaun was saying, when people who have succeeded go out and start telling their stories of the things that they have failed at, but what they learned from them that made them eventually succeed, at something, so people maybe will start relaxing more, around failure and accepting it as a possibility and going into things knowing that it's possible to fail. But like you said, that the Roche earlier, that fail quickly, fail forward. When you fail at something, move forward, learn what didn't work and then start doing things differently. But I think the power of storytelling is what's going to change things for us.
Awesome. Let's talk solutions. Shaun, you talk about education. What about education should we look at when we are, is it Dr. Dulcy talks about get education, be a doctor, practice, what about education? If education is a solution, what about, one of the things that I've heard is you can't expect teachers who have never run a business to teach entrepreneurship, right? Or you can't confine entrepreneurship to one free market day at school. What about education that we need to sort of, emphasize on as part of the solutions to this problem?
Yeah, so I think we actually have to look very carefully at that school education and really think how we can teach real business schools. I've got four kids, two that have finished high school and one that's in grade 10, one still in primary school. So I've seen them do business studies, and it's quite valuable, but it's not really good enough. And it's a little bit of a periphery. And I really think, people will be successful. Their core skills like maths and science and English that are super important. But this is actually, we should think about this as a core skill. If people understand how to be successful, how to take risk, how to grow businesses, the country will be so much more powerful. And not to dismiss the power of history and geography, but I'm wondering if we're just not giving it enough priority in how we think about, educating our youth.
Yeah. Thanks. Dr. Dulcy, what other solutions do we need to look at? Yes, entrepreneurship. Is it, is it a silver bullet? Is it only that? Are there other things that we need to look at as a concoction to the solution?
I'm thinking in schools, like some form of career guidance. When I was in school, like back in the day when there was still Bukutatswana, we had like a career guidance, counselor in every high school, like in a township, and like this is the person that you sit and have a conversation around what you want for your future and things like that, So, and I think like helping kids discover what they are passionate about, earlier on, in life, and start developing them in the direction of what they are passionate about, will make a big difference, in kind of the streams that they choose. Because like when people get to tertiary like institutions, they tend to choose what they think they would pass at, more than like what they really love and what they see themselves spending the rest of their lives, doing, so if even like when you come, like I was saying to someone, it made me like feel a bit cold inside to realize that I completed my medicine degree and went out and worked in communities without ever having looked at economics, finance, all those things that are important in understanding, the context and what you like one will be working in, so like maybe when we start looking at tertiary like education courses, making sure that we include courses, even if they are not like part of the mainstream, but include courses that start making people think about what impact, they can have in the world, even with what they studied. You can study education, for instance, but instead of just coming out to be a teacher, you could think, we have an education problem in the country. Our kids are not educated in a certain way, or there's issues of education access. How can I start working with people who studied other things to see how we can provide private education that is more affordable, things like that. Just start challenging, people in varsity and other tertiary institutions to start thinking around the problems in their country and how they can be part of the solution.
Awesome. Thanks, Dulcy. President Shaun Matisonn, Republic of South Africa, you are a president for one day. What do? Here's a problem: youth unemployment, there's entrepreneurship, there's all these things. President Matisonn, what do you do?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'd vaccinate as many people as I could. That's what I really do. I would get a vaccine in any arm that I could find. But the second thing I would do is I think I would give like presidential medals to entrepreneurs, and I'd really make sure there's financial incentives for anyone that's encouraging entrepreneurs, make entrepreneurship easy, and then really also I think surround maybe to that earlier point, is the narrative too political and not entrepreneurship? Maybe, as a president, I'd bring entrepreneurs into my circle. And so these are people that I really think, we should model ourselves around.
So you look at the section 24J,
Yeah.
Awesome. President Dulcy?
Okay,
Madam
for me,
President?
Yeah, so for me as a president, I would challenge all the existing entrepreneurs now and say, show me how your current business can be developed into one that employs 1,000 young people, and I will give you tax breaks. Awesome. So I would offer incentives to entrepreneurs to actually stop building businesses for survival, but build businesses for growth and just providing more and more young people with employment.
Great stuff. 3 questions that I have, and then we wrap up quickly. Sajida Kara says, and I think it's true for you, Shaun, how do you foster an environment where individuals come forward with their ideas within discovery? And where does one go with an idea that they have? Who can we reach out to build the right networks besides the HR process?
So, I mean, we do lots of things. We have inspiring excellence competitions where we encourage people to bring ideas and we give prizes for them. And then I'd like to think our management team is always open, not through HR, to anyone to listen to ideas. And that's how the company's been built. So we would really be open to any ideas. But I think having a culture and really showcasing good ideas is the cornerstone of it.
Yeah. Because I mean, I remember when I was in corporate, Shaun, you know, I mean, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I feel it always feels like if I want to be an entrepreneur, I have to leave the organization, you know, like the environment here won't allow me to come up with something that will support it, and there's a division, and it will be a subsidiary of the corporate that I work for. It always feels like I want to be an entrepreneur and I'm working for a big corporate, I have to leave because the environment is not conducive. It's not supportive. It's as if I want to be an entrepreneur, like I'm a sellout, like we're all in here and you want to leave us, you know? So it always feels that way. I mean, is it something that you are encouraging actively to say, look, how many of you in here are entrepreneurs? Let's bring your ideas. Let's see if we can form a division within Discover.
Yes, no. That's exactly, I mean, you know, we want to grow and we want to do new businesses, and we've got tons of ideas. Yeah. And new businesses are built around people. So, so people that have that drive and those ideas and that ambition, if you add to them the assets that we bring in terms of capital, brand, infrastructure, etc., all the things that Dr. Dulcy was talking about, finance, etc., that's a powerful cocktail.
Yeah.
You know.
Thanks.
And so we,
sorry, go on.
No. So we encourage it all the time. Sorry.
All right. Awesome. Another question from Anonymous. What's your message to unemployed youth watching this right now? What should they do today, right now?
All right. For me, unemployed youth, number one is the importance of education that Shaun was talking about. Sometimes it doesn't have to be formal. You know, it's more around what do I want to learn, and then just get books, go on YouTube, go on Google, learn as much as you can about what you're passionate about and how you can build it into a business, and then start working with people around you, you know, who have the skills that you don't have to actually like help you, you know, build that business. That's if you're an entrepreneur. You know, if you are a graduate and you're unemployed, look at the businesses that are around you and see what role you can play in them to try and grow them. Sometimes they may not be able to pay you, you know, from the beginning. But come in and say, I'm a marketer, I can take your business from point X to point X plus one. And then you can start paying me when it's X plus one, you know, but in that time, now your CV looks better. Instead of I've graduated and I've been chilling at home doing nothing, this is what you have done in that time. You become also attractive for other big businesses to say, hey, guys, I am not experienced in a big corporate, but this is what I have done in a local business and I've been able to turn it around in this way. You know, you become more attractive in that way. We want like our young people to be just more creative. The problems of this country are a lot. When I was like, there's so many problems in this country, and the solutions are really with the people that are living in the communities that are facing these problems. COVID, yes, it's a pandemic, but it presented a lot of opportunities. I now work with like a company that was started called Welo, that's like scooters, you know, like just scooters to deliver medication to people so that they don't have to come to the practice, you know, for instance. Start thinking around, you know, things like that. You probably have a bicycle just chilling there at home. You could hire someone to ride this bicycle and start delivering the quotas and the chips that, like, you know, someone is selling next door. Just try and look at your surroundings and be creative around what solutions are needed to make the lives of people better around you.
Awesome. So start where you are with what you have. Awesome. Kevin is well, he's basically asking us to check Umthombo Youth Development Foundation, www.umthomboyouth.org.za. But his last question is, how do we teach young people to turn money over rather than spend it on cell phones and clothes?
Okay. Okay, can I take this one first, Shaun? Because I mentor a lot of young entrepreneurs in the township and teaching the difference between gross profit and net profit. People think gross profit is their salary, you know, and then they realize, wait, I haven't paid water, electricity, and on things like that. So first and foremost, decide what your salary is, you know, as an entrepreneur, and put it into your financial statement. You know, when you like look at your sales for the week or for the month, put them down. Put what the cost of sales is. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google is your friend again. Go in there and just like Google financial statements and income statements so you understand, so when you start now looking at your expenses, your salary should be the first one, whether you can pay it at that point or not. If you cannot pay it, still put it in there so that when your business becomes better, you are able to be paid back for all the time that you've invested in your business without getting money. But understand all your expenses are. Get to a net profit. If it's positive, get to an amount that you need to pay SARS, so that what is left then becomes the net profit, of your business. But your salary must be there. It's like your net profit is also not your money, so just like understand your financial statements.
Awesome. So know your numbers, basically.
Yes.
Shaun, you've got 4 kids, and I'm sure with some of the kids, you have learned some lessons. How do you encourage them not to buy sweets and clothes and turn over the money?
So I think the answer is actually it's a problem of human behavior that we've really got to think about the long term. It's actually a problem that we confront in our business all day long. As human beings, we actually engineered to put tremendous value on the short term and not enough value on the long term. And that's why we make poor decisions when it comes to health and driving, and we don't save enough for retirement. But what's interesting is that we can overcome these problems of self-control. But I think part of it is understanding what the benefit of putting money into education or putting money into a business is. Yes, you'll give up something today, but the prize in the future is much, much more powerful. And it's maybe one of the ways to do it is just to think about what the benefit of not consuming is, of using that money on savings, on a business, on an education. It will actually open up much more opportunity and much more value to you in the long term. What I say to my kids all the time is create options for yourself. That's the lesson I'm trying to give them. If you create options for yourself, whether in the choices you make about what to study, the choices you make about the friends, the choices you do with your savings, that optionality is priceless. Yeah. And that's maybe what I tell my kids. Whether they listen or not, that's a completely different story.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We've run out of time, so we've come to the end of our session. Thank you so much, President Shaun and Dr. Dulcy. Greatly appreciate it. Continue doing amazing work out there. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again at some point very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely meeting you, Shaun.
Thank you. You too. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for your questions that came through. Here is a poll as promised. If you can just go through it and rate it, speakers, facilitators, panelists. Were you very satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied? And the next question is, what was the content useful, applicable to your current situation? Was it very partially or not at all? Thank you so much on my side. I greatly appreciate your attention. Thanks to the Discovery team that has been working very tirelessly behind the scene. They make it look so effortless on the screen, but trust me, there's quite a lot of things happening behind. Thanks to the speakers, Dr. Dulcy, Shaun, and thanks to you yourself for watching and following the sessions. And up next is my man, Timothy Maurice Webster. Tim, are you good?
I'm just blown away. Roche, great job facilitating, great job hosting. Awesome. This is a very difficult conversation. Dr. Dulce, you brilliant. Your heart is incredible. Shaun, Madison, you guys did a brilliant job in tackling such a sensitive subject, a subject that's dear to all of our hearts. And with so much unemployment in this country, it matters that people care, that people see that we're not just doing an exercise just to be doing an exercise. We genuinely care. So thank you so much, Dr. Dulce. Thank you so much, Roche, for the work you guys are doing. and getting this day kicked off. And now I get a chance to welcome in Nichole. Nichole, it's 4 a.m. in America. We're going to take a small, quick break, and we're going to come back in a moment. I want to give you guys about 4 minutes and 22 seconds, okay? Nichole and I are going to come back in 4 minutes and 22 seconds where I will do a formal welcome. I will introduce myself properly. I will introduce Nichole and our subject for today and why this matters to you in your life. So we're going to put our cameras off, and now you've got 4 minutes and 7 seconds, okay? We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, guys. As you settle back in and prepare your minds, your hearts for this session, I want to say that I want to echo Roche's statement that we appreciate you. We appreciate you engaging. We appreciate you sending your questions through. We appreciate you bringing your full hearts and your full minds, your full nervous systems. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you being present mentally and emotionally. And I want to do a poll as we kick off, but this is my poll. It's my personal poll. I want to do a gratitude poll. And while I'm doing the introduction, I'd like for you to write down 2 things that you're grateful for this morning. Gratitude changes the brain. It alters the flow of neurotransmitters, helps you release more dopamine, more serotonin. These are positive chemicals. It enhances your positive mood. The literal acknowledging of gratitude fundamentally changes you in your brain. It actually makes you more magnetic, more attractive to other people. When you're grateful and you write down what you're grateful for, it improves your romantic relationships even. It helps the content that we're about to share become more magnetic in your own mind. I want to say I'm grateful that, as one of the things I'm writing down, I'm grateful that Nichole Cirilli woke up this morning so early in America. It is 4 a.m. her time. And I'm grateful that she didn't complain. She was just so happy to do it. She is the executive director for the International Association for Volunteer Effect. It's an organization that's been around 50 plus years now, doing amazing work. Nichole, there's so much about your CV that I think we'll go through, but your organization is responsible for advocacy, knowledge development in volunteerism, network development, mobilization, convening people who want to volunteer. Volunteerism has changed my life and so many people that I care about. And I'm delighted to have this session with you. Nichole Cirilli, welcome to the Mentorship Show.
Thank you so much, Timothy. And I would say that this beverage right here, which is a cup of coffee, I would highly recommend for anyone doing sessions this early in the morning. But I am just delighted to be here.
All right, super.
I am grateful for my coffee, Timothy.
Are you? Okay, good. I'm happy. Is it black? Is it black coffee?
No, it's not. But I am indeed grateful for it and for all those who worked hard to produce it.
So let's kick it off. I want to know, have you ever had a mentor? If so, how did it impact your life?
Oh, Timothy, I have had so many mentors. And, you know, to me, I think of mentoring as a mindset, right? It's, yes, of course, it's an action. We have a particular mentor, but it's also the way you conceptualize your world and life. And it's about approaching your life with the curiosity that says, I can learn from everyone I meet. And to really sort of find those people, and they're all over the place, who can teach you what you need to know in that moment. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit later on in my presentation about something called the new skills clock, right? Believe it or not, we're not born knowing everything, right? I think Shaun mentioned something like that in the previous conversation. So we really have this great opportunity to learn and grow from the people around us. For me personally, I always knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on issues like climate change, even when I was very young. And when I was young, it wasn't the issue that everyone spoke about. And so I didn't really hear people talking about it. I didn't see people talking about it. And so it wasn't really until I got out of college that I started to find people who did care about this issue that I could learn and grow from. And so I began to see myself in that picture. And that's the crucial part of mentorship. It allows you to see yourself in that space that you want to be, that matches the vision inside you. So tons of mentors throughout my life, and looking for them still today. Really finding people around me still today who can teach me what I need to know in that moment.
I have 5 mentors. How many do you have at the moment?
Well, I have, well, I actually really liked what Dr. Dulcy said, and I'm going to repeat it because I think of it so much. It's really been a mentorship moment for me. Failure is the learning of what does not work. How brilliant is that? To think of failure that way, as opposed to thinking of it as, oh, I did something bad or I screwed up, what have you. Think of it as that opportunity to learn what doesn't work so that you can then learn what does work. I have 2 right now. One person who is at Google, who is helping me figure out how to run an organization. And it's a great space for me to just sort of talk to her about my issues, my problems, and the good things that are happening. And
Lovely.
then I am in a mentor relationship right now with a gentleman from Mozambique. We'll see a picture of him later. And that is very much an active mentor-mentee relationship where we are both mentors and we are both mentees. And he's a
I love
brilliant
that.
person from him, and I learned so much from him. It's unbelievable.
I love that. I mean, my mentors helped me navigate culture, being in a foreign country, understanding some of the blind spots that there would be no way for me to know, being sensitive to cultural dynamics. I've got a mentor that helps me understand finance. And, if you think about you as an executive director working at that level, and the fact that you still have mentors helping you navigate, it's so important. And I hope everybody gets that as we go through this. And maybe you're in a position to volunteer. This masterclass is about volunteerism, and maybe you're in a position to volunteer to be someone's mentor. But as you mentioned, Nichole, it's such a beautiful exchange at times. It's not just a one-way dynamic, right? It's
Right.
an exchange. And as we transition into this conversation about volunteerism, why don't you give us a firm definition? Let's not assume that we all know. Let's put it, what is volunteerism? What does it mean to volunteer?
Volunteering is, it's the act of giving your time, your talent, your treasure, and your voice to something you care about. And let me break that down. Your time, because some people say, I've got an hour, I'll do anything you want, right? Or I've got 2 hours, I'm going to give my time. Some people give their talent. They're really good at writing, or they're really good at communications. And so they say, I'm going to give my talent to you and to this cause that I care about. Their treasure, right? So their philanthropy and their actual currency, their dollar, their contributions, and their voice. And their voice, and this is something that's really emerging, and I just couldn't be happier about it. The blending of social activism with volunteerism. All these people that you see raising their voices around issues like racial equity, around issues of climate change, around issues of equality, that's volunteerism, right? When you take time to devote any of those items that I talked about, time, talent, treasure, voice, that's volunteerism.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard it explained so beautifully, but I love the idea of giving your treasure. And as you're about to share much of your treasure with us, I want to just sort of signal to everyone that at the end of this, we're going to give you the opportunity to volunteer. So look out for a survey that we're going to share at the end, and I will be reminding you. So I'm going to give you the platform, Nichole, to allow you to present. We'll come back and have a little bit of dialogue about it. Guys, please send in your questions. I'm going to tell you a story before we conclude as well about how volunteerism fundamentally changed the life of a young woman named Cirilli from Orlando West. Okay. All right, Nichole, over to you.
All right, Timothy, are you seeing my my slide? My screen?
We are. And just a quick correction, we're going to send the survey to you guys via email.
Okay.
All right, you can go.
All right, excellent. So you'll note right here that I have crossed out the word help, right? So the power of volunteerism to help harness human potential. I don't think it helps. I think it actually does harness human potential. And not enough people see volunteering like that. So I took it upon myself to make the correction so that we're really putting that front and center. It doesn't help harness the power of human potential. It actually does. And it does it in some pretty profound ways. So let's continue, shall we?
Yep.
All right. This slide, I could just start and end my talk here, right? This is the slide. If you want to understand the power of volunteering to harness human potential, let's just stop right here for a second. This slide looks at the response, the volunteer response in Eastern China in the early days of the pandemic, right? And I'm just going to sort of mention a few things here about this slide. So it's at the front line, right, of the pandemic. As the pandemic really starts to spread and rise, and I don't, excuse me, and I won't necessarily go through all of this, but as the pandemic spreads and rises, you begin to see volunteerism rise up as well. And I just want to read that quote that I've bolded, that part, the study that is there, the link is there, you can go see it. As the virus sweeps through China, the daily volunteering rate rises as the pandemic worsens. And think about where we all were in that moment, right? No one knew. We all knew it was a grave risk. We didn't know the extent. This is at the epicenter of that. Think of those volunteers who, despite that danger, despite that uncertainty, despite their very real physical threat, raised their hands and said, I'm going to help. So if that's not a depiction of the power of volunteerism to harness human capacity and power, not really sure what is. This notion
That says something.
Yeah,
it says something
please.
about the instincts of human nature, right? To follow what's happening. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, and Timothy, please jump in. You are more than welcome to jump into my presentation at any time with any comments.
Sure.
You bet it says something about the power. It says something about our capacity as humans to want to help. And that is probably the other, I think, universal definition of volunteering. And this actually shows that, right? So if you ever have anybody question that, just clip this chart and show them that amidst all that danger, there were still significant amount of people, unprecedented amount of people who said,
Wow.
yeah, but still, I'm going to dive in here and do what I can do. All right. This is a masterclass, as Timothy has said. So I'm going to tell you what was really important to me, what has been seminal to me in my learning, and I will impart my treasure. I love that, the way you described that. I have had the privilege of being in the social impact sector all of my career. And this is something that I found about 10 years ago, and I want to show it to you. It's by a gentleman named David Ballard. And Mr. Ballard, back in 2010, 11, 12, started studying how corporations take up the issue of climate change. And as they do, how do they expand their own consciousness and expand their own skills? And I've used this across my career to help understand how, whether we're corporations or individuals or organizations, when we're confronted with issues, what are the stages of growth we need to do to go from zero to superhero? And he starts with this non-responsiveness. I don't know, I don't care. And he goes into this issue, then the next stage becomes compliance. And let's just, for the purpose of illustration, stay with climate change here. You know, compliance stages, I'll do what I have to do, but I'm to comply to regulation, et cetera, but I'm not going to do much more. And then into efficiency, where it's like, hey, okay, if I do stuff, I'm actually saving myself money if I do use less paper. All the way into what he calls breakthrough. And at breakthrough, you're no longer in that space of, gee, you know, I don't really understand this, or why am I doing this? Into this space where you're becoming a champion, where you're really understanding the connection between yourself and your world, and you're deciding to become an active part of the solution. This was really important to me in my career, to understand, again, how we can help harness the power of humanity to solve some of these issues that we face. One other thing really helped me in this, well, lots of other things, but one other thing I'm going to tell you about today is this notion of what's called the new skills clock, right? Believe it or not, we're not born knowing everything. And there's actually this theory that tells us that, right? And so this first thing, okay, I'm going to use a silly analogy, right? But it's one that I think that works. Say you're born into this family of really bad comedians, people who think they're funny, but they're not. They don't even really know that they're not funny, right? So they tell really dumb jokes or really unfunny jokes, right? They're unconsciously incompetent. They're bad and they don't even know it. And so you live your life like this, and then all of a sudden somebody says, hey, you know what? You're not funny at all. And bang, you enter this stage of conscious incompetence. All of a sudden, you know your jokes aren't funny, but you don't really know what to do about that until you start learning, until you start hearing really funny jokes, until you start being around mentors who actually are funny, and you start this phase of conscious incompetence. I know I'm not good enough, but I know how to become better. You do it, and finally you enter this stage where you're funny, you don't even have to try, you don't even really realize it. That fluidity of skills. And every time you've learned something, you go through this 4-stage process to go from I don't even know I'm good to I don't even know I'm good, because that's how comfortable and fluid you are with that. All right, so what does this have to do with volunteering and my journey for volunteering? Well, let me tell you, I've put these through these, and I'm, what I'm telling you is collapsed over 10 or 15 years of study and knowledge. But so taking those 7 stages, those 6 stages that I talked about how we take up the ability to work on issues that we care about, and using this skills clock that recognizes that people don't start knowing everything, that they have to actually build and grow to become competent. I've developed this theory of called 4 A's, right? Okay, you start.
Okay, wait, before you continue, Nichole, I just want to make it clear to everyone, you shared some of this work on this continent, right?
Yes.
Yes, and you've worked in South Africa before, right?
Oh, indeed. Yeah. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I wanted to make
Globally.
sure people are aware that these models are global, that these
are
not
global.
Just, yeah, okay, great.
They are global. And thank you for pointing that out. These models are how humans take up knowledge and information and how they make change.
Got it.
Yeah? Okay. So again, I'll go really quickly here, and then we'll get to how volunteering, again, transversely, globally, helps us move through these. So we develop our awareness. From awareness, we develop the agency, which is sort of this pathway to how we choose and empower ourselves to take action. We take action, and then we become in this phase of association, really. We're working together with people. And this is how volunteering works, and globally, right? We're working on challenges and solutions. We're taking action, and we're supported by a community of people who really can help to reinforce that. And that is a global phenomenon of volunteering. So let me just go through some of these 4 A's and see how that really looks in terms of volunteering. So volunteering raises our awareness about the issues. So I'm gonna, it doesn't really, you can put in the chat if you want to take a guess of who said this and this quote, but I really think this is about how we really become aware, and how volunteering and engaging in those issues really allows us to become aware of the things that matter, right? One day in 1997, we read an article about millions of children who die from diseases such as diarrhea, pneumonia, that were easily treatable in wealthier countries. That blew our minds. As new parents, it hit us especially hard, because we thought to ourselves, if there's anything worse than losing the death of a child, it's the preventable death of a child. We sent the article to Bill Sr. with a note that said, Dad, maybe we can do something about this. And those 8 words changed the rest of our lives. When you think about that new skills clock and being so new that you're completely unaware of something, volunteering provides that on-ramp for you to take that first step, for you to say, I don't really know about this. I had no idea, to a place where you can really see yourself as part of the picture of the solution, to saying, maybe there is something I can do to help. Maybe there's a way I can actually get involved. So let's go to the second A, which really talks about that sense of agency, where, you know, you're aware of issues. You know, anytime we're aware of issues, right, we see something, think of yourself and you see something that's really, you don't feel like you're empowered to act, and how that really can lead to despair. And you can think about that anytime you've seen something that's sad or a desperate situation and you felt like, "Wait, there's nothing I can do about that," and that pit in your stomach. Well, volunteering provides that agency. It tells you, here's how you can be a part of the solution. And I want to talk about my friend Didar, who is the person that I am in that mentor-mentee relationship with. Didar is in Mozambique. Didar is a fantastic leader, and I learned so much from him every day. During the pandemic, Dieter jumped right in. You can see him. The first thing he did was his horta, his vegetable garden. And he really, you know, did this in to help out his Association for Society Defense and Development as a way to sort of have self-sufficiency for his community around foods and food sovereignty. But the more he got engaged, the more the issue of what to do in his community around the pandemic became front and center, and the more his agency grew around that, until the picture on the right, you can really see his own agency has grown, and he's operating, or he's now developed this foot operated hand washing machine that he's deploying in schools and hospitals throughout Mozambique. And being that volunteer really has helped him develop his ability to take action, to be effective, and to influence the circumstances in his community.
Wow.
Okay, next. All right, here's the second A. Again, this is a wisdom I've come back to over and over again because I'm human. We're all human. We get tired. We procrastinate. We say to ourselves, there's nothing I can do about that. Volunteering, Mr. Goethe says, whatever you can think to do or believe you can do, begin it. Because action has a magic, a grace, and a power. And Mr. Goethe is looking a little stunned there. I don't know why, but he really is, he's right. And volunteering provides a way for us to get involved, right? Volunteering invites you into what I call this circle of change, and it empowers you to be part of the solution. And here's the other benefit to this, to the thing that Mr. Goethe is saying, that action, that fostering of action. Your power and your engagement grows as a volunteer. The more you volunteer, right? You grow too. Your mind opens, your horizons expand, you meet new people, and you understand in new ways, right? When you lend your heart, your head, your hand to these efforts that you care about, that very empowerment gives you more momentum, gives you greater access to new ideas. Look at Dieter. If I had asked Dieter when he sent me that picture of his horta, well, what do you think about a foot-operated hand washing machine? He would have said, I don't know what you're talking about. But engaging in the issue drew him to more and more understanding of the actions he could take.
Can I share my story real quick?
Oh, Timothy.
So, yes, so it's based on your model, okay? I wanted to share the story about the young woman in Orlando West and how she was impacted by volunteerism. So not long after I moved to South Africa, I had heard about some of the challenges of orphans in Orlando West and Soweto. And I decided just to go volunteer at an organization called IAVE. There's a woman there by the name of Mom Carol that had taken in about 2,000 orphans and was giving them school fees, etc., providing clothing, food, and finding homes for them. So I went to volunteer, and I realized that, you know, I could work with them on soft skills. So I brought in a number of my friends that I had just met that are South African, And we connected with this young girl named Cirilli, one of the volunteers. Yes, Dr. Dulcy says Mom Carol is a powerful woman. Yes, one of the volunteers knew someone at the Oprah school. And so the volunteer connected with Cirilli and got her into the Oprah school. And then Cirilli ended up at the Oprah school. She graduated from the Oprah school. And then another volunteer helped fund her to get her into UCT. Now Cirilli has a computer engineering degree, and she's now volunteering, teaching other young girls about computer coding. But it all started because people decided to volunteer. Anyway, please proceed. Sorry about that.
No, Timothy, this is the cycle of life, right? And it's one thing that I want to leave the people with is this notion of each one teach one, right? And this notion, that's one of the oldest organizing principles from the American Civil Rights Movement, right? Is that you are responsible for your own self and your own education, but you're also responsible, and you are just as you have been taught, but you also then must turn around and teach the person behind you, and that's what you're talking about, that cycle, right? And that's how we achieve liberation. Is that each one teach one. I am responsible for myself, but I grow because somebody ahead of me has taught me. I turn around and I teach the person behind me. That's that cycle that is volunteering is at the center of. Because if no one started that circle, if there wasn't a first person like your young woman who started it, there wouldn't be that continuous link. So I think that's a beautiful story and a beautiful thing to put here. All right, let me move on quickly. All right, okay. I love this graph because when I put it up, people think I'm super smart, but this is the Metcalfe's law. And let me just tell you what Metcalfe's law is. It's quite simple. Metcalfe's law is actually this principle that the more people use a system, it's exactly what we just talked about. The more people are part of a cause or use a system or part of an effort, the greater that effort becomes, right? And volunteering promotes this sense of association. A beautiful story of those concentric circles that you just talked about, right? Volunteering really allows us to creates the spaces and the places that people gather, and in that sense of combined effort that advances and deepens our work. And here's the thing also that I want to stress is that leaders get tired. Change makers get tired. Entrepreneurs, as we just heard in listening to that first session, they get tired because system change is difficult and it's lonely and it's frightening sometimes. But when we come together around a cause or an issue and we look around the room and we see all the other people that are with us and who care about this issue, we realize we're not alone. And we have that community within which we can learn and share and grow and face these challenges together. As somebody who's been an activist all my life, I can tell you the bad guys win. When you feel disempowered and lonely and isolated, the bad guys win. But volunteering and working together, you really harness that human potential. So if you're feeling disempowered as a change maker or a leader, go find other people, go volunteer with something you care about, and you'll find that sense of that common human caring around it, and you'll feel a lot less isolated. So that's my complicated Metcalfe's law slide. All right, next. And this is, if you were counting, you would have known I did 4 A's, but I'm going to sneak another one in there for you, my 5A theory. And that's that volunteering promotes accountability. And I love this quote by the famous American athlete, Muhammad Ali. I love it. He says, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth.
Oh,
and
wow.
You know something? It doesn't matter. You talk, Timothy, about being globally relevant. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, no matter what circumstances you face, You are called to help, right? You are accountable to your fellow inhabitants of this little circle called the planet that we live on. And volunteering enables you to deliver on that bill. Volunteering enables you to deliver the accountability to make the world a better place, right? All right, last slide. And then we'll get to, we're gonna be back to this again. All right, so, you know, this happened to be the journey of Bill and Melinda Gates, and I realize they're extremely wealthy, et cetera. I'm not looking to make comparisons between us, but I do like their journey. Their journey, remember, where they saw that article and they said, Dad, maybe we can do something to help, right? And it doesn't matter in that moment that they're billionaires, right? What matters in that moment is they rose their awareness and they said, maybe there's something I can do to help. And they did participate as volunteers. Remember, I said time, talent, treasure, and voice, right? And I just want to quote this because I think this is such a powerful, optimistic point to close this conversation on. And you need to think about, and you're not the only ones who've been responsible for this effort. Lots of people have, right? But that 50% decline in child mortality by the age of 5. And you thinking back to that moment in 1997 when they felt lost and disempowered for, you know, even as influential and wealthy as they were in that moment, they saw that article and their hearts fell and they felt lost and disempowered. But they said, maybe there's something we can do. And here we are. And I think it's a wonderful, powerful testimony to the power of volunteering to harness human potential.
Wow, that was amazing. Brilliant, Nichole. Thank you very much. You know, your research and your understanding of how human behavior, environmental conditions map and track alongside the philosophy and the discipline of volunteering is very impressive. You know, sometimes we take for granted that organizations like yours are not just doing sort of random work, but you are thought leaders in this space. You're thought leaders, and we really appreciate you sharing your treasure. I want to go back because, and please guys, send in any questions you guys may have at this moment. We're going to have a conversation, but we'll be fielding your questions as we go through this. Oftentimes I've noticed that when I've sent out solicitation for people to volunteer, people often feel like they need to be perfect before they can share their treasure, before they can share their time. Can you dispel that myth and just sort of share your thoughts about what do you need as a default to start volunteering?
You need a heart. And you don't really even need that. What do you need? No, actually, I'm going to correct that statement. You need yourself, right? You need to show up. That's what you need. You need to just show up, and maybe a little bit of courage to dispel that notion that you need to have a particular skill set, because everyone can make a difference. And just show up. Just show up as yourself, and have that mind that says, I can contribute. I can, just my mere being here is a statement in and of itself. And it is, right? Remember, the bad guys win when you feel lonely and isolated. So just stepping into that space and saying, I don't know what I can do, but I know I want to help solve this problem. I want to help in this issue. And that's it. And you'll find your way. Everybody does.
You know, what are some things that organizations that are people who are leading organizations that are online, what are some things that people can do to start triggering awareness? I mean, because when you go through from awareness to agency to action to association to accountability, you know, getting that started, you know, there are times I've seen so many people who go, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's paralyzing, right? And so they don't start. And so, and they sit on their couch and whatever, and they say, oh, I can't do anything about that. Look, I think that that's a big question. How do you break down? And particularly in the age that we're in, right, where messages come at us all day long, and where you know where almost the system is sort of working to make us feel disempowered, right? Is all you have to do is tune into any media channel, be it social or otherwise, and spend about 5 minutes there before you start to feel your heart palpitate a little bit. So I think finding mentors is really, really key. I think finding people who are having these conversations and finding people who are really willing to walk into the situation saying, I don't have to solve this problem, right? There's a wonderful quote that has guided me as a lifelong activist. Anytime I feel like I shouldn't even start because I don't know how to get involved, right? And that quote it says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." In other words,
Oh,
you don't have
wow.
to solve the problems, Timothy. You do not have to
Wow.
show up and say, I'm going to solve this problem, but you are not free to abandon the problem either. Again, back to Mr. Ali and your quote, in his quote about the rent you pay. All right. I'm going to say that again because it's been so powerful to me in my life. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Show up is what that says.
That is, look, I just got chills, and I'm being, I mean, very serious. Like, I mean, I do think that there are times when you go, I'm overwhelmed in my own life. I got to take care of my kids. I got to take care of all this stuff around me. So if I start something, I need to finish it. I think it's our human nature, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I want to finish something that I start, but that's a great point. You can dive in. I mean, if you think about the Mandela 67 minutes of giving 67 minutes of your time, initially I was very critical of that. I was like, what is 67 minutes? You know, there are times when you go help a kid, maybe the kid feels abandoned when you leave after 67 minutes, but at the end of the day, if everybody starts something, starts paying a little bit of rent, I mean, this is a very powerful point. Uh, you know, what are some of the ways that you volunteer? Because your work is volunteerism and educating people, but do you do any work outside of your organization?
Oh, very much so. And let me just go back to your point very quickly. The Gen Zers volunteer that way, right? So it used to be that you used to go in, and I think this is a brilliant innovation. You used to go and sign up for, an organization, and you used to go like your orphanage, and you would go and you would report every Monday from 3 to 5. That would be your shift, if you will. Gen Zers are starting to change that globally, right? They're saying, I want to do this right now. I don't want to necessarily sign up to this organization for the rest of my life, but I care about this issue right now. And
Yeah.
that's their episodic sort of volunteerism. My personal volunteerism is around electoral stuff. Well, I volunteer for a ton of different things, but I love to work on
Okay.
campaigns. And I
Oh,
work on
wow.
campaigns because issues matter to me, and I want to change my process. But I work on campaigns. This is a secret, and again, this is also global. Campaigns are like getting an advanced degree. You learn about how to communicate. You learn about how to influence. You learn about how to be articulate about the issues that you care about, and you learn organizing strategy. So I'm always telling people, young people who say to me, what's the best internship? I always talk about joining campaigns and they're fast paced. You have to do all that in a very short amount of time. So you learn extremely quickly.
Oh, wow. It's crazy. Like, your presentation has brought a lot of light to some of the questions I've been having. By the way, people want to know if we can share your presentation. Are you okay with that?
Oh yeah, of course. I have maybe cleaning up the notes thing. I'll send something that is that doesn't have any of my crazy notes, because I like to put notes in the notes field that most people might look at and say, what is she talking about? But I'd be happy to share it.
Yeah, one of the questions thank you. One of the questions, another question we have is, if you do not have people willing to be mentors to you at work, is there a network somewhere where we can access willing mentors in different fields of work? Yes,
Yeah.
they are. There
Yeah.
are. I mean, could you talk about how to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe don't use the word mentor. So sometimes people, when you get approached, and I'm guilty of this, it's just probably as you are, Timothy, would you be my mentor? I sort of say, oh, I don't have the time. I don't know if I can do that. So think of mentoring that in that episodic way. What do I need to know right now that the people around me can teach me, or someone around me can teach me? And
Yeah.
think of it as that, so don't think of it the way we used to think about volunteering is you're my mentor and you're going to have to be my mentor for the next year and a half, blah, blah, blah. No, think of it as, what do I really need to learn, right? And who are the people around me that can teach me that? And don't think about heroes, right? Don't think about heroes. Just dispel that notion from your mind. Think about people that have skills that you really want to emulate and things that you really want to learn about, and think about it that way. So rather than looking for this person who is successful, famous, whatever have you in your midst, look at the people around you that are really good communicators that you've always sort of sat with and say, wow, you tell a really good story. And think about them as your mentor for communicating, or somebody who, is take it by skill, and it's a little less daunting, and it's much more available to you at that point.
Yeah, this is a very insightful conversation. I've got one more story. I want to welcome Riaan. I can see Riaan has joined us. Riaan, we've got about 5 to 8 more minutes in this conversation, and about 12:10, we're going to come back to you. You're welcome to put your camera off if you'd like, while I wrap up with Nichole and enjoy the rest of this conversation, okay? Cheers. So, Nichole, I believe that, I want to share this story, and I want to get your advice on why you think the response was the way it was, okay? Mm-hmm. So about 3 days ago, I put out on Facebook, I saw where people were losing jobs because of COVID, that we have gone through another lockdown. I have, we are in lockdown 4 in South Africa. So one of my favorite coffee shops, the barista lost his job. And when you build those relationships with people in your community, this guy makes amazing espresso. And we started this conversation speaking about how much we appreciate our coffee, right? And so I was moved to post on Facebook that I will, 1,500 Rand is about $100. I said, okay, I don't have a lot of money, but what I do have is a little bit. So I will take someone grocery shopping, and I will buy you groceries to 1,500 Rand and talk to you about how to bounce back, some strategic ways to look for opportunity. And I posted this, and then within literally 10 minutes, I had 3 other friends who said, but why don't you take more? I'll give you another 1,500 Rand. And then I posted on Instagram, and before you know it, I'd raised over 20,000 Rand of people just wanted to help people. Now I've got people saying, I will take people grocery shopping and give them ideas as well who are in career guidance. I never asked for anyone to volunteer, not once. So share with us the effect, because this is not about me. I don't want any praise. I don't care about that. What I want to know is, what was the human effect that happened when I put that out there? Because you shared models and so forth, the Metcalf model and so forth. So I want you to apply so that people understand that this is a human dynamic.
You did 2 things in that moment, Timothy, 2 really important things, right? You raised awareness and you provided agency. So you raised awareness that made it personal, right? And I didn't see your posts, but I'm sure you talked about this barista. I'm sure you talked about the wonderful espressos. You put something relational out there, right? You made it personal. Okay. When I talk about climate change, I don't talk about the charts and graphs. I talk about what's changing for me. I talk about the fact that the trees I love, dearly love, I'm a huge tree lover, breaks my heart because they're not going to survive, right? I talk about that. You made it personal, okay? That's really, really important for anyone who wants to bring people to their cause, right? Make it personal. The other
Wow.
thing is give them a way to act, because remember, caring without a way to act equals despondence and despair, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Inspiring people with a great story, but then leaving it there, they shut off, right? So what you did was you inspired by raising awareness, made it relevant, but you also said, and here's how you can act.
Yeah.
And those
Wow.
two are extremely powerful components to engaging people and to making something go viral in that, making that issue go viral.
Can we co-design a one-pager real quick? One of the things that I've noticed that when people are seeking volunteers and they're seeking mentorship, people will often say no to your request because they don't know what to expect. So I want you and I to have a personal moment, okay? So I want us to role play. I'm going to request from you in a one pager for you to mentor me in a role play. And here's how I'm going to do it. In this one pager, and I want you to help me construct this one pager as we role play. So the one pager's job is to tell you who I am, to tell you what I see in you that's valuable and how I'd like your support. Also to manage how much time I'm hoping to have and how I see this engagement happening, all in one page. So I'm gonna reach out to you, Nichole, and I'm gonna say, I'm Timothy Maurice Webster, and I am interested in increasing my knowledge about the power of volunteerism. The second part of the document, I see that you are a global leading voice in volunteerism, and I recognize you're busy, etc. The third part of this one-page document is going to say that I could see us having one email exchange, maybe a quarter, 3-4 times a year, and maybe a Zoom call 2 times a year on this much, and maybe some references from you a couple times, and that's it. And I see myself being able to give back to you in this way, in one pager. Firstly, are you going to say yes?
To you? Absolutely.
Okay, help me hammer out this document. How should I change this document to make sure that people get a yes when they seek volunteers and they seek people to mentor them?
You'll keep it short, as you said. You will be direct, as you said, and you will. The only thing, how I can help. Why me, right?
Okay.
Why me of all the people that you could be choosing this? Why me? And I don't say that to appeal to my ego. I don't at all. I say that because I want to know, where I can help. I'm choosing you because I read an article that you wrote on X or your blog
Yes.
post, and that really appealed to me. And I want to get your insights further on that. That could really help me. That would be the only addition that I would have to your wonderful one pager. Why
Thank
me?
you. Thank you. Guys, we've got a poll coming up about how you've experienced this session. In a moment, you're going to be hearing from Mr. Riaan van Reenen, he's CEO of Discovery Life. But as we wrap up this session now and prepare to go forward, I think I've sent a photo to our IT team of Cirilli when she was 10 years old and when she was 22 years old.
Oh,
10
right.
years old. And if you guys can share that photo after the poll, that would be great, because as Nichole said, to be able to put a face to volunteerism, I think would be very, very powerful for us to end the session this way. If you don't have it, that's okay. We completely understand. I sent that at the last minute, so no stress. Nichole, any sort of final comments as people are completing this poll?
Again, I just want to reiterate, right? Oh, there it is. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So this photo is when in Orlando West, Kanye was 10 years old, and it was a Saturday morning. I had asked a bunch of volunteers to come out, and And, you know, we just kind of took to her. She's an amazing young woman. The second photo is us at a coffee shop where she is telling me that my website is a disaster and she wants to redesign my website, and she's giving me a hard time, and she's become an extraordinary woman. She's now working at Investec and helping them design their sites. I just thought I would share that story and put a face to it. You guys can remove it now. Thank you. Okay, final comments.
Just that, Timothy. Your work is not done after you've been mentored. Your work is just beginning, right?
Wow.
Just as her work was not done when she, you know, got to where she it sounds like a really wonderful place. She turned right back around and she helped. And that's that cycle that I would want to leave all of you with. Your work is never done, right? And think of that, each one teach one, and that line of people that are responsible and accountable for building our humanity, right? Remember that.
Nichole, Cirillo, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for waking up at 4 a.m. Thanks for your treasure. And I appreciate the thought leadership work you guys are doing at IAVE. And we look forward to you sharing the presentation. And what are you going to do now? I'm just curious. It's like, what is it now, 5 a.m.?
No, it's like 6. I'm going to go back to bed.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Good night, good morning, whatever you're going to do. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
amazing. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you to Discovery Limited. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to all of you who've joined for this entire wonderful series. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So as we're going to take a 3-minute break. We don't have much time, but as I said before, I would really like for you guys to make sure you stay hydrated. Drink plenty of water. It boosts what we call alpha waves in the brain, enabling you to make connections quicker as you learn from this content. Alpha waves also help you think through what's happening between your conscious and your unconscious mind, pattern making, putting patterns together to be able to design new intelligence for yourself based on the information that we're sharing. So you have 3 minutes to grab some water to prepare yourself for the next masterclass, where I will be introducing our next guest speaker and taking us through this sort of final session for the day. We'll be right back. I'd like to invite Riaan to put your camera on. I think as we gear up for this next session, which is a masterclass on the human touch in a technology-filled world. At the beginning of the last session, I ran a personal poll. And the personal poll was to ask you what you are grateful for. And I asked you to write down 2 things. Now I'm going to ask you to write down 2 more as I begin to introduce Riaan. I want to say that I'm grateful for the insight that I got from Nichole in our last session. And I'm also grateful that we have the CEO of Discovery Life taking time out of his busy schedule to share his vast experience. You know, his background as an actuarial scientist, he has extraordinary experience in the space of making a difference in people's lives. There are over 400,000 individual policyholders in his division, 600,000 plus group life policyholders. And he's not just a CEO, he's a person who cares about the fundamental well-being of all of these people. Riaan, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Timothy. It's great to be here. Thanks for everybody's time.
Yeah, so as we begin this conversation, I'd like to know, how has mentoring played a role in your life? Have you been mentored before?
So I was very fortunate to join Discovery as a young actuarial student almost 22 years ago, and really being exposed to a phenomenal and inspirational leadership team. I had a lot of on-the-job mentoring, so I haven't really had any specific external mentoring exposure, but a lot of on-the-job mentoring through this phenomenal team, which really taught me a lot, and also tapping into the experience, the value proposition, and just wider thinking from a wide group of people and very specific individuals through that process.
When you think back to that team, you're a young man coming out of school, very vulnerable, very naive, a lot of grand ambitions. You know, do you think you'd be where you are if it was not for the influence of that team on your life?
No, definitely not. I actually had it was my second role after studying at university, and I had a short period of time with a small other company, and one of the reasons that I decided to move across to Discovery was through the leadership team. I mean, I without any hubris or arrogance, I realized that there's a limited amount that I would be able to learn from the environment that I was before joining Discovery. And I can say 22 years later, I never ever felt that same feeling within Discovery. There's always more you can learn from within the team, from somebody else, from a very dynamic team. And I think that's made a huge difference in my own growth as well as my career growth.
This is just a point of curiosity. I haven't prepared you for this or anything. I'm just curious, do you ever publish thought leadership pieces that you publish in any publication such as LinkedIn or anywhere? Do you ever write articles or blogs or anything like that?
No, I'm an actuary by training, and we tend to be fairly shy people. So I've kind of kept out of the limelight. I did chuckle when I saw the human touch in technology that you've asked an actuary to speak about it. But no, so read a lot, but haven't externally published. I have mentored a few individuals through the years in teams.
Okay, awesome. Well, the great irony of an actuarial scientist speaking about the human touch, that's what makes this whole series magical. I was thinking about your colleagues and all of the sort of senior team that we have worked with here. And you guys have really delivered some really powerful presentations, and I'm looking forward to your presentation in a moment. I think before we dive in, I'd like to know, how do you see mentorship playing a role in helping create the society that we all want to live in?
Yeah, I think mentorship can be extremely powerful in helping a society to move forward. I mean, at its core, it's really an opportunity to share experiences. So you've got the ability to share experiences, good and bad, with the next generation of leaders. And I think that makes a big difference. You create the opportunity to provide a sounding board. I mean, I found it extremely valuable in my own career, in my own life, to just have somebody to talk to, just to give you a second opinion. And a lot of the time when sketching out a problem or a situation, just telling somebody about it, you find the solution to that problem yourself. But another voice really, really helps add to it. And sharing in experience, sometimes different perspectives, different backgrounds that you wouldn't have encountered yourself. You get exposure to that. And it really opens up your world to wider thinking. So I think it's very valuable, especially in a society which I think there has been a drought of value focus in certain areas of our society, and you're seeing that big swing right now. And I think mentorship can play a huge role in establishing values in society as well.
As we prepare to queue up your presentation, we're going to hear from you. You're going to present a few slides, and we're going to have a little bit of dialogue. As remember to please share your questions as we go through this. But if there are women listening, I've just been moved personally in my energy to inspire you to consider actuarial science as a career. I got a chance to speak at UCT and at the actuarial science club or community. And there were about, in that class, I think about 50 students, and there were only 3 women at the time. And I'd like to encourage you. I mean, it's such a powerful career that has so much influence over all of our lives. And please consider this as a career and reach out to the Discovery Mentorship team if you'd like to be mentored or think about this as a career. I know how generous they would be in making a difference. So feel free to share your slides now, and we're looking forward to it.
All right, let me quickly get the slides, and I echo that it is really a very rewarding career to think about. Right, hopefully you can see my slides.
Yep, looking good.
Right, I'll try and not bore you with too many technology slides. Like you say, this is a passion of mine, but it's adjacent to my normal day-to-day work and training. So I think it's fair to say that technology has completely changed the world we live in, all aspects of life, whether it's education or work or entertainment, access to healthcare, which is very close to the insurance industry. I think technology has just evolved and continues to evolve. So it's very important to stay abreast of that and to really embrace technological change. And COVID has really seen an increase in the pace of development of technologies. I mean, there have been many quotes, but there's been a narrative around how COVID has accelerated technological development by many years. I mean, there was digitization, some quotes from a leading consultancy that supply chain interactions have been accelerated by about 3 or 4 years in terms of normal development. Digitally enabled products, if you think on just interaction of companies on their website, or service delivering and deliveries remotely, I mean, that's been accelerated by an estimated 7 years, and all around there's been a big refocus on technology. So I think one of the positive side effects from the COVID and the lockdown worldwide has been this tremendous development of technology. I mean, if I just think about the session we have today, 2-3 years ago, we would have probably set up this session in a massive conference venue somewhere and have various speakers on stage and physically present, rather than doing this remotely via Zoom as we are today. Just sharing some insights in the insurance industry, which I'm very close to, and various surveys have confirmed that technology and data is the #1 priority worldwide for insurance companies, and digitization has been second on the list. Again, that theme that COVID has accelerated the need for embracing technology and digitization of businesses certainly manifests in the short term and the life insurance industries. I also thought I'd share some of the closer to home technological advancements, specifically within Discovery Life on what we've done. And we've embraced technology in the delivery of our product to really make it simpler for customers, our financial advisors, to communicate with us, to deliver our product and to share in that product. Some examples have been that we've embraced mobile, showing financial rewards and projections within our product on the actual mobile device. We've allowed digital signatures, electronic signatures to digitally accept application forms. You moved away from a typical environment where you had an advisor sitting around a table with a customer and you can sign forms or sign the forms on the actual tablet. You're now working remotely, so we had to adapt. How do you get legal binding contracts through to you in a way that protects you legally, but you don't have face-to-face interactions? And then we've integrated a lot of our value illustration tools as well as the compliance functions, for example, the replacement records of advice, which is a very specific piece of compliance which you have to meet in entering into a new contract, and to also do all of that digitally and electronically. And two specific examples I would like to share with you. The first one is AI quote, or artificial intelligence driven quote, which we've developed. It really allows a customer or an advisor to take a picture of your existing insurance schedule or insurance quote, and then through the artificial intelligence technology, it will automatically bring up an equivalent Discovery Life quote to really enable that customer to seamlessly and without the need to enter lots of details and information to bring up a quote that they can consider. In fact, there's just recently won an award as worldwide at the EFMA awards to be very transformative in life insurance industry, and won that category worldwide. So it does show you the thinking coming out of local industry, how that can change the world of insurance. Another good example has been virtual underwriter. So for those that know life insurance work, you fill in an application form, and then there's typically a lot of medical questions, occupational questions, or questions around what you do in your past times for hazardous type of activities that you need to answer. And then that goes to an underwriter who makes a decision whether the policy is at standard rates, or there need to be a loading to take into account higher risk, or there could be a discount to take into account lower risk. Again, throughout lockdown, it was very difficult to do the medical part of that with face-to-face typical interactions through nurses, traveling nurses going to customers' houses or places of work, or they're coming into our buildings. You couldn't do that during the initial lockdown. So we've set out to develop what we call virtual underwriting. It allows underwriting and medical questionnaires to be completed in a session like we are having now, in a one-on-one between one of our nurses and the client, or you can do it telephonically. And it's got the added advantage of not only removing the barrier to be present in the same physical location, but we're seeing an increase in the quality of underwriting being done through this process, as well as the customer journey being a lot better. Usually on a paper and remotely based underwriting type of process, if something gets picked up that you've got a underlying medical condition, I don't know, let's call it asthma, for example, you would receive an additional questionnaire that you have to answer questions, and that adds to the time lag in doing this. Virtual underwriting can flex you into a different set of questions based on your real-time answers during that same interview, making the experience a lot more interactive and quicker to the customer. So I think it's just some examples of how we've used technology in our day-to-day world to deliver our product through lockdown, and to embrace that to deliver a better customer journey. And we'll continue doing this. We've also seen technology improve the way that we interact with our own staff through various initiatives, our Smart People system, meeting platforms, again, like we're doing here through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Skype, allows us to meet our staff and meet up in sessions wherever they are. We've done a lot of quizzes to bring some social engagement between teams that aren't seeing each other day to day. And I've personally set up sessions for to meet and interact with teams throughout this lockdown. So I typically twice a week set up a session to meet with a team on work matters, but also social matters, and just make sure that we do engage and catch up. And we've seen the benefits of it. We've never seen our staff engagement through surveys being as high as we have throughout the last year. So it really shows you can connect with people remotely and still keep that personal. It's a way of keeping personal interactions going. And then lastly, I thought I'd share some of my own personal experiences, just how I've found what worked for me personally in the digital world. So a few things that I've realized shortly after entering into meetings in a digital world: preparation becomes a lot more important than it is for a physical meeting. Although preparation is always important, in a digital world, there's no physical interaction, there's no time to fill. You really need to be on top of your game and to prepare beforehand, but everybody knows what they need to bring. If you need to share something on a screen or have something at hand, you need to have that ready. It helps to keep it personal. So having videos on in an engagement really makes sure people engage. You can see people's reaction. It actually becomes quite a personal meeting. You should also avoid distractions. So specifically doing emails or phone calls or WhatsApp messages, any distractions throughout that meeting, limit that to the bare necessities. And we've also had quite a few humorous interactions. I mean, so don't worry about that interruption. You have people's kids coming in during a meeting, or a dog barking or jumping on your lap. And I mean, it's at the end of the day, we're inviting people into our personal spaces. So it's okay if something happens that you need to deal with. And I think that's also become quite accepting. Initially, people were quite scared about, well, you know, what will people think if my kid interrupts or this happens, and it's okay. Then to have virtual meetings with large groups, so the chat function on Teams and Zoom works really, really well. And if you need to control many comments, using the hand raising functionality also works quite well. And I think if everyone participates, virtual gatherings can be very personal. I mean, you can see people's reaction on a screen, their faces, their reactions, and it also serves as a bit of a leveling the playing field, where you found that some individuals who might be naturally introverted or shy to speak up in a group, they really found their voices through this period, as well as teams being in different locations. It's an equalizer where everybody now is in the same location. It doesn't matter if you've got a bigger team in Johannesburg and a smaller team in Cape Town. Everybody is equal in sitting around the same virtual table at the same time in the same place. Yeah, so technology will continue to drive the future. It will continue to change the world we live in. We've just populated this slide with a couple of examples of almost predictions of what could happen in future or what's already starting to happen. And I think it's fair to say that it will change and continue to change every aspect of our daily lives, personal as well as entertainment and work lives. So that's a very quick overview from my side. Just wanted to share a couple of thoughts, and very happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, as we shift to conversation mode, I would like to say, I appreciate you making this personal, Riaan. I really appreciate the fact that, you know, oftentimes people see at your level that you probably just got some, you know, you got a team of people working on this and you're quite detached and you just kind of operating in the cloud somewhere. So thanks for bringing it down and making it personal. And, you know, in that vein, I'd like to continue, you know, the conversation based on your some of your personal thoughts about the idea around hybrid thinking. And from a human touch perspective, there are some things that are gained, as you mentioned. Many people on this call would not have been able to come to the actual venue and they would have missed this mentorship session because, you know, maybe transportation cost or something, but now they are. So that's a gain. But there are some things that are lost. You know, if I can sit with you at a venue and I can feel you, there are some tactile experiences. There's a high five that we can assimilate in our mind, but you know, there are real losses in this hybrid. Let's look at the upside and the losses, and let's talk through how we should think about them. You know, just what are some of the things that you think, let's start there, that you in your division have gained because of it? And then let's talk a little bit about the losses and how to think about balancing the two, okay?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think it's a question that worldwide companies continue to battle with, exactly this hybrid world that has opened up. How do you maintain the wins and minimize the losses as you've described? And I think it's recognized that there will be some future developments, and I think it needs to mature and progress as we learn more. I think starting maybe with some of the gains that we found through this hybrid world. We've definitely seen an increase in productivity throughout the organization, definitely initially, where during initial lockdowns, people weren't driving around. You saved a lot of time on commuting. You don't have the cost of commuting, the time wastage of sitting in traffic, etc. has been a big win. And that's typically been channeled into more family time with relatives, time with kids, and also more flexibility around work. So work hours have become a lot more flexible, especially parents with young families. It gives them the ability to look after the youngsters. Some of them need help with school tasks or also doing remote school. And at the same time to do work or have a bit more flexibility in when you do that. So I think the key gains in my mind have been around saving time on commuting, having more flexibility, and also in remote teams. I've mentioned before, it's where you used to have a meeting before with a big team, say in one location, and teams in other locations dialing in on a video conference screen. There was a disconnect between the team on the screen versus the team in the room. That's gone.
Sure.
All of a sudden, everybody on the team. It doesn't matter where any of us sit. I think you found it through your previous speaker, in a distant country, in a distant location. There's no barrier. It's as if we're in the same room all the time, and that's been a big win. So I think certainly the remote teams have won a lot. And just that general, I think we want to maintain that flexibility moving into the future, that you can balance your work life and your personal life better with more flexibility than it was in the past.
Okay.
Some of the challenges that we are facing in this environment is really personal interactions. It's that building up social capital. I think it's very easy when you know somebody and you've known them for years to just continue. I mean, you know people's personalities, interactions, you've shared experiences, you can just pick up where you left off. However, where you've got a new member in the team, it becomes harder to absorb them in that team. The on-the-job training is harder on a screen than what it would have been with their colleagues next to them, conveying what to do. And I think organizational culture is much harder to convey when you don't have people, especially young members in a team, that can absorb what is the culture, what is the way of doing. It's one aspect to train somebody how to do a specific role or task or job. It's slightly more nuanced to introduce your culture and your values of organization to that individual. It becomes more academical if you give training around that than what you experienced every day. And then I think lastly, collaboration around research and development, new initiatives, innovation is probably slightly harder on a screen than what it would have been everybody in front of a whiteboard drawing pictures. An hour later, you bump into your colleague at the water bottle again, and gee, I thought about this idea since last we met. It becomes a bit more formal, that process, which is another challenge.
You know, I want to in terms of that, in terms of this dynamic that, you mentioned earlier that you're a little bit shy, so am I. I want to share with you guys how I prepare for group sessions or talks and so forth. And then I'd like your thoughts about how you deal with it as well, for how do you gear up for your coffee session? So if I have to deal with a group of people and I can see that there's a few hundred people online and that people have their cameras on, I go for walks in the morning. I make sure I get a little bit of exercise in, I get the hormones and the chemicals flowing in my body. I also then imagine myself in the presentation. I assimilate how I want to come across. And I think for introverts out there, if you are struggling with engaging people online, because people think it's just in person where it's tough for introverts, but it's also tough when you've got a ton of people sort of staring at you and you don't get that feel oftentimes, and it can feel kind of cold on a digital platform if people are waving and not clapping out loud and they just putting up digital memes and so forth. So it can be a little bit scary. So I wanted to add a little bit more of the human touch, because there are moments when I come on and I'm really, really nervous. And so what are some of the things that you do to prepare yourself as an introvert, a shy person, to prepare for your coffee sessions as a leader?
Yeah, look, it helps a lot for coffee sessions that you've got interactions. I mean, where you do a webinar and it's you looking at the screen, it's that can be daunting. You sometimes wonder if there is somebody out there actually listening, or
Yeah.
you're just looking to this computer screen in front of you. There's no reaction, there's no feedback. It makes it really, really challenging. Whereas in a coffee session, you get the feedback, you see people's faces, you get their questions. So it's a lot more interactive, a lot easier. The preparation for those, I found it tends to be more informal sessions, specifically the coffee session. So there's not a lot of specific preparation unless there are topics to communicate or deal with specifically, then we would prepare. Otherwise, we try to keep it very informal, and it's a round table, for the lack of a better description, on a screen. And I think that helps. You realize it's one human being talking to another human being or a group of human beings, and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses to deal with. So I think it's really to just be yourself, go for it and talk. Personally, I find sometimes over preparing for a emotive topic does not help. I mean, it's sometimes better just talk from the heart. When you have to say what you do. Obviously, if it's a business related presentation, I mean, then you do have to prepare, especially if numbers or facts are involved. So it really depends on the context. I mean, if a formal presentations, yes, prepare, but also never just follow a script. I think it's important to see where the conversation takes you and talk from the heart.
Let's talk a little bit about the maintaining of the culture. You mentioned that it's a bit of a challenge, right? Sometimes people can become very informal, sometimes without being in a community environment where you can touch and see somebody's reaction. People often become a little bit too loose. And I've seen it in many times on a lot of digital calls. People go a little bit overboard. They go past the edge of the boundaries that we've set. And I've seen some really funny stuff, as you mentioned in your presentation, some really hilarious things that have happened. People put on the screen and there's a kid running by with this literally no clothes on or whatever. So let's talk about how to think about boundaries and how to think about, particularly when it comes to values. One of the things that, in terms of constructing these boundaries, that I think about is based on values. So here's an example. So two people may say they own the value of time management. At a very intense high level, that value, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, but it's still time management. So 10 is somebody who will show up 15 minutes early. 1 is somebody who will show up barely on time, but they are on time. So the intensity and the frequency of that same value is higher and lower. And in terms of maintaining culture, I often think about it on a scale this way. So if we are having a team meeting and we say come casual. So casual for one person could be like me, where I put on a jacket and this is a 10 and you've got on a casual shirt, not a tie. That's still casual. On a level 1, you've got somebody who will show up in a polo shirt and shorts, but a bikini is too casual. You've gone overboard. And a tuxedo is too formal. You've gone overboard. So let's talk about how to establish some boundaries online. Like, what are some ways to ensure that the culture of your division at Discovery Life still feels like Discovery Life? And how do you think about establishing these boundaries from one extreme to the other?
No, it's a great question. I think you've touched on it in your description. I mean, through the values in Discovery, we've got a well defined set of values with narrative around each one of them, what they mean, and I think that's been very helpful. And we've had a deliberate refreshment of the values through the business, where we've had sessions and had our leaders talk about the values. What does it mean to them? How do they interpret it, and how do they experience those to be guides throughout their, I guess, personal and business lives? And we've got a very strong core purpose, which makes Discovery unique from a business point of view, but also people rallying behind that purpose of making people healthier and enhancing and protecting their lives. And I think between the core purpose, the values, and we've got a separate leadership charter, it's quite well defined, and it gives that platform to allow engagement and people to talk to it. In many of the mentoring sessions that I've had, I've actually used either the leadership charter or the values as a framework, where you start a mentoring session and you don't really know which direction this would go to. It could be, let me tell you my interpretation of the values. How do you interpret it? And, start that conversation. It takes you down a different direction, but at least it opened the door and you've got that conversation going. And I think that helps in establishing the boundaries, and you'll quickly realize, okay, what is within our value framework and what is really pushing the boundaries, or what is clearly outside of our values framework. And I think that's been extremely useful, more so in this virtual environment than before. And also the point, again, keeping cameras on in engagement sessions is so powerful. I think you found immediately that behavior changes when people know that, I can see exactly what you're up to. I can see what you're doing. You get better behavior, more engagement all around. So I think that's been very helpful. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question from
it does.
Uni versus tuxedo, but hopefully it helps.
Yeah. I think that the idea around, I love the fact that you have a narrative around your values, because that does help. And I think that if there's an NGO listening or anyone else viewing this, and you're thinking about how to roll your values out, having a story, having a narrative that really offers a trajectory of how this translates online is a very, very powerful way to get people to buy into the story, to see themselves in the story. We, as human beings, we're wired. Stories are pieces of technology or technology that helps us connect with people. As we start to move to wrapping up this conversation, I'd like to find out from you, if I was being considered for a promotion in your organization and I came on a call, and I'm sure you don't do interviews yourself, or maybe you do. Let me ask you, do you ever do interviews? Do you ever engage potential talent? You do. Okay. So if you do, what are some ways that I can make sure that I show up to impress you? Let's talk a little bit about the human touch, about if I have to present to someone as senior as you. For a young person out there, you can grill me, okay? So if I have to present to you, and what are some things you look for? What are some human things that you look for in ways that I could demonstrate to you high value, competence, and someone who's worthy enough to be on your team?
Yeah, look, it probably depends on the specific role that one would interview. So you would have a different emphasis whether you're looking for a very creative role as opposed to a very financially rules-driven role. So I think you do have a different spectrum.
Okay.
That and different skill sets, personalities that really would resonate differently in a different role. But I think having an open and frank conversation is very important, that you really know what you're seeing in front of you. The label on the tin is what you're going to get when you open the tin, as an analogy to understand. You don't want a pretense in an interview and you realize that actually this person is at a very different to what they presented. So I think that's important, honesty throughout that process. Also having an open conversation. You do need to have a meeting of values. So just like it's not all about what the company sees in that individual, it's also the opposite. Does the purpose and the values of a company resonate with that applicant who's looking for a job? I mean, you're making a long-term commitment potentially here, and you want to make sure that you're going to enter into a healthy relationship and you're going to be fulfilled, that you can live a purpose, you can really make a difference to society. And I think one of the key things is that if I would say there's one overarching trait that is helpful in virtually all roles, it's being inquisitive. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't just sit back and be intimidated through an interview process. Ask for questions. I mean, it's as the company needs to be comfortable with that employment process, so do you. It's again, if you don't want to be in an environment where you can't feel that you can't be yourself, that would be short-lived and it won't lead to happiness. So I think there's various traits, but be yourself, be honest, be inquisitive, ask for questions, and make sure that the environment is where you want to be. And
Awesome.
Importantly, that you can grow. I mean, I've always give the advice to certainly the leaders in our organization: never ever employ somebody that you think is not smarter than what you are. Strange, but always hire people that are smarter, because you'll learn from them and they'll take the organization forward in ways that you wouldn't have been imagined is possible. If you always constrain yourself by people who think the same way that you do and which you think will toe the line, that's not the way to go. Get people that will challenge you and that will take you forward.
You've got a really sharp executive assistant, Mary. How do you guys keep the relationship strong and in a way where she can almost think for you at times, where there's a connection there that she can proactively engage? I mean, we went through our briefing session and she was very, very thorough, very professional, and asked really good questions as we were engaging. And the fact that you guys don't cross each other's paths much, you've discussed a little bit of this, but I want to go into how you keep that relationship thriving, optimal, and moving in a way where she feels like she still has control and agency in the relationship.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that question is directed to me or to her, but given that the camera's off, I'll field it for her. Look, I'm very fortunate to have a very exceptional executive assistant that really lightens the burden on a day-to-day basis. So thank you, Marlies. And I think it's all about engagement, and it's also being clear in communication. I think communication between us is vital. There are very tight deadlines and quite a pressured agenda throughout the year that one needs to deliver to. So I think communication on exactly what we need to do here is very helpful. But then again, I mean, going to our previous conversation, somebody that's inquisitive can take the lead and really challenge, okay, is this the best way of doing it, and take a proactive step and starting initiatives on our own has been extremely helpful. And frequent conversation. There's no substitute for frequent conversations and touch base.
Sure. I mean, one of the things I've seen with my assistant is, exactly that. You schedule those conversations that even if you don't have something to speak about, you put in the schedule so that you can keep those contact points. And I found it extremely, extremely helpful. One of the things that I've done is shared free courses. We've got some really good information and insight from yesterday's session about how you can offer value. And for anyone listening, I'd like to share with you a concept called the emotional bank account. And if Riaan and I are, let's say I'm consulting Riaan in his division, an emotional bank account works this way. If I deliver on time, that's a deposit. If I deliver exceptionally in a way that inspires, that engages, that really triggers a warm feeling, that's a deposit. If I send a thank you note, if I send Riaan a podcast that I think aligns with his values, if I send him anything, if I engage him, it doesn't have to cost anything. It could be something really, really small that is values-based, that aligns with his values, that's a deposit. A withdrawal is if I don't deliver on time, if I'm late and my promises start not to mean much because I'm not consistent, etc. Those are withdrawals. And eventually your emotional bank account will run to a point where when you ask for something, you will have insufficient funds and you risk that your account is going to be closed or terminated. So I like you to think about this model when it comes to building relationships online and keeping that human touch, which is the subject of this masterclass. And I think as we move to a conclusion, Riaan, I'd like you to share with us over your vast career and getting to this level, what are some of the deposits that you've been able to make that you feel like have helped you create some really strong accounts with your colleagues, with people in your community, your spiritual community, just in general? Because for me, when I came to South Africa, no one had to care, but people cared, I think, because number one, people are great people, but also I wanted to make deposits because I cared. And when people felt that my deposits were sincere, they would make deposits back. And we developed really strong, healthy relationships. So I'd love to hear from you how you've made deposits.
Yeah, it's a fascinating analogy. I really like that. So I think it's a brilliant way of describing it. I think it's the analogy to the bank account is probably your reputation. I mean, it's whatever you can do to bolster your reputation would be analogous to a deposit in your bank account. So I think it's really entrenching yourself early on, making sure that what you say you deliver on and what you do. And I think through, especially in a workplace environment, if you can build on sound delivery on time, beyond expectations, those certainly counts as deposits in my book. And that you also build up that reputation. If there's a problem in a certain area, this is the go-to person. I mean, that's I think part of that. And hopefully you don't make any withdrawals. You only keep on depositing. And I think similarly, you can take that analogy throughout your personal life, living the values. Don't be a different person at work than what you are at home or what you are in your community. And I think that you also gain people's respect. It's okay to say no to certain things which might not be viewed as the best option in the short term, but again, that could build long-term respect. I mean, be yourself, stand up to your values, build people's respect, and I think that will keep those deposits flowing.
It's funny, like I've made some really bad mistakes, Riaan. I don't know if you have, but I've made some mistakes where I thought were deposits, but weren't actually deposits. I had a former assistant who hated flowers, but I got her flowers once. And sometimes we assume that some deposits are universal, and they're not. And I have a mentor who I phoned early in the pandemic because I needed a phone number from him, from someone quite senior as well. And I didn't check on him and see how he was doing. I was in almost survival mode where I needed something quite quick. He didn't tell me how much it bothered him. He just gave me the number, but he stopped taking my calls for a few months. And this person has been very influential in my life. And then it triggered and hit me that actually I didn't make a deposit alongside the withdrawal that I needed. Because when you ask busy people for something, if I come to you, Riaan, as busy as you are, as much as you may want to help, your work is demanding and it may be difficult. And so if I'm going to ask you to come outside of your extremely busy schedule, I need to make sure I have a strong account. And so to offset this really negative account that I had with my mentor, I sent him a book of someone I interviewed in a podcast named Roy Sutherland out of the UK, a book about alchemy. And that book I knew would be a deposit for him. I knew that that book would get him thinking differently about his own circumstances as a values-based leader. And that one deposit turned our relationship around. That one deposit caused him to call me back and to see how I was doing. And as the lockdown had started to lift, he invited me over for dinner, but we never talked about it. It was that unseen dynamic that happens between relationships. And oftentimes I feel like with this technology that we have, a lot of things go unseen, unsaid, but they're felt. And I appreciate you taking time to share your personal experience. I appreciate you taking time as a leader to chart your journey. Congrats on the AI Quote Award. You guys are doing really, really wonderful work, and I appreciate that. If you have any final comments before we place the poll, this is your moment.
No, thank you. I'd just like to thank you for your time and everybody listening here. Hopefully it's been of some value. Yeah, it's been a great session, and thank you for your insights as well. I mean, it's always good to get that insights from again a different perspective. I really love the bank account analogy, and I'm sure I'll be using that. I'll be using that in future. So again, I mean, you've made a deposit into that bank account through the bank account analogy. It's been really inspirational, and thank you for everybody's time. And hopefully you can take some of the learnings from all the sessions, not this session only, but all the combined sessions, and really find some value to it.
Thank you. We've got some really exciting sessions coming up tomorrow as we wrap up this extraordinary week. Guys, look out for the promotional clips that we will be sharing on social media. We will be sharing clips that inspire you, and I think it'll be a good idea for you to share these. We will be sharing clips, and you can share with other people so that you can trigger engagement with these ideas. We'll be sharing Riaan's presentation as well, if you're okay with that, Riaan. For those who want to see a little bit more of the detail in the graph, it's often hard to see on the screen. Some people will be looking at these presentation on the phone. Are you okay with that?
Very happy to share.
Okay, cool. Guys, continue with the poll. Thank you again to the entire Discovery team, the unsung heroes behind the scenes working technology. We would not be able to do this without you, all of the assistants and associates that made this possible. All the long nights do not go unappreciated. Thank you very much. If you're satisfied, please put satisfied. How you feel about this? This is a neutral. Again, my poll as you are going through this poll was, I wanted you to write down what you are grateful for. And this is a principle that I live by. As I mentioned at the beginning, gratitude changes your brain. It boosts parts of you and your nervous system that you're not aware of. And the ability to become magnetic. So when people are on a call with you, they can feel your generosity. That comes from being grateful. Let us know how satisfied you were. Let us know how you feel about these sessions. We really appreciate the feedback. We know that Discovery is committed to this on a long-term effect. This is not, the reason why we're putting up this poll is not because this is a short-term thing. This is a long-term thing. We're going to be sending you a survey for your capacity to get involved, to be able to join the year-long volunteer program. Please respond to that. We tried to show you just how powerful and universal volunteerism is in the earlier section. And, you know, these presentations have been so thorough and so clear And I've been moved, and I'm really, really grateful. And I see it as a privilege to be able to have these conversations with you. I know that my other colleagues, the other hosts, are as grateful. And as in my final remark, I'd just like to say that tomorrow, we're going to close this off with a big bang. I personally have the absolute privilege to be hosting 2 other directors. And we're going to kick off the morning with another powerful, powerful session. So bring your best energy. Eat well tonight. We call it brain-friendly food. Eat well, eat responsibly to a point where you can try to digest food, drink plenty of juice, fresh juices as much as possible, eat vegetables as much as possible. It impacts your brain. It enables you to, again, boost these alpha waves, the waves in the brain that help you digest information. I grew up in a family in the southern part of America that would pray all day, but then all they ate was fried chicken. And at the end of the day, if you can have all the faith you want, but if you're killing your body and you're breaking down your body, it does not help in the long run, guys. The brain and body offers an extraordinarily powerful connection. If you take care of your nervous system, you take care of your body, you will absorb information, become more magnetic. And this is not just some sort of metaphysical mumbo jumbo. This is real world stuff. Thank you again. We will see you tomorrow, and God bless.